So I fucked up, but that's fine. Can you see now?
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
see.
Okay. I think we're live now.
Okay, are we live?
I think so.
All
We
right.
went we went
Yeah,
live
we are.
we
Okay,
went we
cool.
went live on the wrong channel.
Let
Sorry.
me mute the tab. Okay, great. Welcome everybody to a special Ask Us Anything edition of um, Secular Jihadists for a Muslim Enlightenment. My name is Ali Rizvi, and with me is Armin Navabi.
Hello. How's the audio?
Yeah, how's the audio? Is the audio good, guys?
Yeah, blonde
Over
infidel,
sharing?
let us know.
So,
Yeah,
yeah,
so
so this is an Ask Us Anything episode, so you can ask, but we usually do start off with a theme. And the theme, interesting, is Armin found something that he disagrees with me on. Now, we do disagree on a bunch of things, right, Armin?
we do, but we didn't find enough stuff that we disagree on. Like many of the things that we disagree on was based on people, not necessarily ideas, and our reading on different people. So
Mhm.
it wasn't necessarily on views. But now I think we found something based on something you tweeted recently that I was like,
Yes.
what the fuck? Ali, okay. And I was like, this is great because we finally
and
could
and
discuss. Yeah.
yeah, and this is why we did ultimately title this thing the Me Too movement from the perspective of men, because there are a lot of men, obviously, who are reacting in all kinds of different ways to the Me Too movement. And Armin and I both have very different perspectives on this, apparently. And Armin realized that when he saw something that I tweeted. So, Armin, do you have the tweet? You want to say it?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna bring up the tweet. By the way, before I do that, can I make Bij and Mike? Do you guys want to be mods on this channel? Let me know. I'll make you guys mods. Anyways, let me bring up the tweet. Wait, was that the tweet?
Hello, everybody. Oh, everybody's piling in. It's
Oh,
great.
where's the tweet? There we go. Okay, for years. Go ahead, read it.
Oh, are you reading it or am I reading it?
No, you read it. You have a sexier voice.
Oh, really? Do I? I didn't know that
Yeah.
was a. Okay, I don't know if there's consensus on that. So I wrote this, and this was after the context of this is there's two contexts. So can I explain the context before?
No.
So first of all, there's Trump. So Trump came out at one point in some press conference he was saying, and he was talking about how it's a really scary time for men. And Donald Trump Jr. also said, when he was asked, "Are you worried about your sons or daughters?" Something like that. He said, "No, I'm worried about my sons nowadays." So that was happening, and I think that they're both right. Right there, I mean, but there are more people who are worried about their sons nowadays, whereas they used to be worried about their daughters before, and especially a lot of sort of conservative people. So that was one thing. The second thing was there was a woman
No,
named.
let's do one by one. First of all, let's address this. Read this tweet.
Yeah, no. I need to say this to
Lead
guys.
your regressive leftist tweet.
Yeah, I will. Hold on. So there was there's a Blue Star Navy Mom 3, this woman named Marla Reynolds, who tweeted a hashtag him too, which started getting trending, right? So that's why that hashtag's on the tweet. Him too. And she put up a picture of her son in a Navy uniform. She wrote, "This is my son. He graduated #1 in boot camp. He was awarded the USO award. He was #1 in A school. He's a gentleman who respects women. He won't go out on solo dates due to the current climate of false sexual accusations by radical feminists with an axe to grind. I vote hashtag him too." She eventually deleted the tweet because everybody slammed her for it. And then her own sons, including this guy, they came out and they said that this was her ridiculous tweet, and we believe women. Blah, blah,
Okay,
blah.
we believe women. How?
So based on that,
Okay,
when
go on. There.
all of
By
this
the way,
stuff,
I'm gonna lose half our patrons today, so half
why
our
are you saying
subscribers.
that ahead of time? No. You got to give more respect to our patrons. We're disagreeing on something. How do you know I
But
won't?
guys, remember that I'm gonna say some stuff that some of you are gonna get really angry with me. Some of you are gonna get really angry with Ellie. Even if you disagree with me on this, I still love you guys, and I still hope we could disagree with each other in a friendly way. Okay, and obviously I could be so wrong. And Ali could be wrong, and if I'm wrong on these views, I know these things are very heated, and these things people have emotional feelings about these views. If I'm wrong, I hope you could prove me wrong, because I don't like to be wrong. But even if you can't prove me wrong, I hope you could still see some other stuff that you maybe agree with me on. But yeah, go on, Ellie.
Right, yeah. Well, I mean, this is a nuanced conversation, so I think we're going to uncover a lot more than this than meets the eye. but because this is obviously Twitter that we're looking at, right? So what I wrote after these things that I talked about was I wrote, quote, "For years, girls were told not to drink too much, to keep their distance and behave so they don't get raped. Now, boys are being told not to drink too much, keep their distance and behave so they don't get falsely accused. Now they know, and that's a good first step."
How is it?
Hashtag him too.
Okay, first, how is this? First of all, you're using him too as like a satire, right? Like you're
Oh, of
making
course,
fun
it's
of him.
satire. Yeah. I'm
So
just making fun
okay,
of.
but the rest of it is not satire, right?
No, not at all.
The rest of
I
it
was
you
dead
really believe
serious.
in. Okay.
I actually
Um,
think that. Now, if you look at the first part, it says that girls were told not to drink too much and everything, so they don't get raped. Of course, I'm not pro-rape. And now
Good to
boys
know.
are being told not to drink too much, except behave so they don't get falsely accused. And I am not pro false accusations. Rapes happen a lot. False accusations also happen.
But
And
wait, so you're
yeah.
blaming? Okay, so first of all, you're blaming the victim. So if somebody gets falsely accused because they drank too much,
Hmm.
that's you're saying that's good? That's progress?
No, they don't get falsely accused because they drank so much. I'm just saying this is
No,
not about false accusations.
no,
Like
no. You're
that's not
saying now boys are being told not to drink too much, keep their distance, and behave so they don't get
right.
falsely accused. That sounds
Yeah.
to me. So you're not talking about real accusations. You're talking about false
I'm
accusations, right?
talking about false accusations. I'm talking
So
about
that
the
sounds to
fear.
me like blaming the victim. That's
No.
not
No, that
progress. And
no, that's not what I'm getting to.
right.
What I'm getting to is that there's no girl who wants to be raped, and
No,
rapes happen.
that's a separate thing. Okay.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm
I
coming.
mean,
I'm
no, no,
ready. Well,
but
let me
okay,
finish.
okay,
Let me
finish.
finish. And just like there's no girl who wants to get raped, and the rapes do happen, there's no boy who wants to be falsely accused, and false accusations
There's
do happen.
no
Now,
person
for
that
the
wants to
longest,
gets
yeah,
falsely accused. Okay.
or no person who wants to get raped. Yeah, we could say person too. Now,
No,
for the
I'm not saying, I'm not trying to be like all PC and saying don't say men or boys,
uh,
but or girl, but I'm just saying that this is a general thing. I mean, most people don't want to get raped, and most people don't want to get falsely
want to be
accused.
falsely accused,
One of them
exactly.
is definitely worse than the other for sure. Nobody is denying that, right? But neither of them are pleasant.
I
But go. Yeah.
from as somebody who has been falsely accused in the past,
Right.
um, I would say I don't know what it's like to be raped. I'm pretty sure that that's worse. But being falsely accused for a man is a very horrendous experience. I've been through it, and I know that it was a horrendous experience. So
Right.
what I'm saying is that for the longest time, you had girls suffering this, right?
Okay.
The risk of being raped. Now you have boys suffering the risk of being falsely accused. Both are horrible things. But
Okay.
now, so now what's happening is, as a consequence of this, and that's why I said a good first step. This is not good.
Why is it a good first step?
Well, neither of these are good things. Good first step is because in the discourse, now that there's something, initially there was only something for the girls to lose, and boys largely got away with it. Now there is something potentially for boys to lose as well.
No.
The second thing is,
That's actually the second one, right? The
Mhm.
second thing that you're referring to actually makes the first thing worse.
No, they both make the other one worse. They
Yeah,
both
but
do.
okay. So here's the thing: a lot of people seem to be like on teams. Like I'm on the woman team. I'm on
I'm
the
not
man
on
team.
any team.
No,
Not on.
I know
Yeah.
you're not. I know you're not. But I'm just saying that anything that suggests that to make things equal, instead of reducing the oppression or the unfairness on one side, for the sake of equality, let's have a little bit of shit on the other side. That's usually not my idea of progress. That's not the equality that you don't. You're like, oh well, they had it worse, so let's get this side of the team have experienced a little bit of that. Just taste a little bit of what the other
I
side
wouldn't.
went through. No,
I
let
wouldn't.
me finish. Let me
Yeah.
finish. The idea is that we had experienced so much shit that now you guys are just experiencing a little bit of it, and that's good for equality. That's what it sounds like to me, right? And I don't think that no amount of equality should come by bringing some other group down.
Yeah.
Equality should come by bringing one group up, rather than pulling another group down.
Listen,
Even if you could justify it by saying, well, this is a tiny little bit compared to what other, doesn't matter. You don't promote equality by pulling another group down.
I completely agree with you. But what I think helps, unfortunately, right? And this is I mean, neither of these things are good. None of these things are good. What I'm talking about. The point isn't that, oh yeah, this is great, we're getting revenge. The point is, actually, Adam put it best here. He wrote it in the chat, Adam Monteblanco. He said, I think Ali's just saying now men are starting to feel how women feel. I don't think he's blaming boys. And that's the thing. For the longest time, when women said that, we get raped and this happens all the time and we have to watch it over our shoulders all the time in dark alleys, a lot of guys were like, oh, come on, you live here, we've got equal rights, we have the women's lib movement, why are you so worried about it? Or, when the cat call, I would take as a compliment. There's a lot of guys who think that way. But now what's happening is that they are understanding the kind of thing that their female, their sort of half of their species has been feeling for a very long time. And the other advantage of this, I mean, well, I don't want to say advantage, right? But the other consequence.
So how about this then? How about, okay, so if you're saying this is the first step, let's go one step more. Let's actually go ahead and rape more men, so they even more understand what women, so women get raped more often than men, right? So for the sake of the progress that you're looking for, you're saying this is a good first step. Let's go ahead and actually harass and rape men more often, so that they understand what women are going through.
Hey, I'm not saying let's go out and falsely accuse men.
No, I'm just saying but you're saying that's a good first step. How is that a good first step?
Oh, well, no, I don't think that we should have more men or women getting raped or more men or women getting more falsely accused.
No, but how is that? Okay, how is that? Explain that part. And that's a good first step. How is
that? No, that's not a good first step.
You just said that it's in your tweet. You said now they know, and that's a good first step. How is that?
Now they know that there is. I'm talking about an observation that is happening. These are not policy recommendations. They're not social behavior recommendations. This is an observation that first there was just this thing happening. Now there's this thing happening too. So now maybe the conversation will be balanced.
No,
now
it
maybe
won't.
There will
actually, this is what happens. It doesn't work that way.
In the long term, it does. Historically, it always has. So
whenever you try to equalize things by bringing another group down, not only it doesn't work, it makes the other side go through.
It's like me saying that, okay, there was one country, right, that had nuclear weapons, okay, and then that country was like, oh, okay, yeah, we can do this, we can tell you what to do, we can colonize, we can do all that stuff. Now their counterpart, or their main power that they were going against, they now have nuclear weapons. So is it a good thing that two countries instead of one now have nuclear weapons? No. Should we go out and say that every country should get nuclear weapons? No. But the fact that the other country has nuclear weapons is now going to make the first country think, oh, okay, so this is probably, now that we're concerned about this other country, now we know what it feels, the rest of the world may have felt like. So then you have that whole thing of mutually assured destruction, right? Which is not theoretically a great thing because it sounds really depressing, mutually assured destruction. But what it does is it keeps things at bay and it keeps the conversation balanced.
False accusations. I know you're not for false accusations, right?
No, I'm not for rape either.
Yeah. Well, I know you're not. Okay. I don't want to act like I'm saying you are. Okay.
Yeah.
But false accusations actually of men actually hurts women victims more than it hurts men.
It does, yeah.
Because if even 2%, even if 2% to 10% apparently false accusations, what it does is that it really hurts the cases of the 90%,
the real ones,
real accusations. So false accusations, if we make an environment where false accusation could increase from 10% to 15% because #BelieveAllWomen, and now you're encouraging more false accusations by doing that because now it's so easy to get away with false accusations, you're really hurting the case of the real accusations. And I want to address something that Mike is saying. Mike is saying in the live chat, is saying maybe it's good first step for assholes to understand how they behave. But this has nothing to do with what we're saying because we're talking about false accusations. We're not talking about the real accusations. Okay? So
no. I actually agree with Mike.
What?
Sorry, I was gonna, that it is. Um, there are people who are upset. There are actual assholes out there who are now aware of the fact that if they do something to a girl, for the longest time, like a lot of guys used to do things to girls because they thought that okay, the
But
girl's not
that's
going to
not what
report
we're
it.
talking about. Your
No, no,
tweet
no,
is
no, no,
talking
no. I
about
know, I
false
know.
accusations.
Yeah,
Obviously. Okay, just let's clear this part. Nobody is saying that people that are actually raping women should be able to get away with it. Nobody is advocating for that. And any progress towards
but
making sure that women that are getting raped get justice, any progress towards that,
again,
I'm
Armin,
hoping that everybody
yeah,
agrees that we're all for that, okay? Like, I'm
this is
hoping
just
nobody
this is
misunderstands this,
now
okay?
this is an observation. The reason I explained the context of this is because Donald Trump Jr. said, right, that I'm worried about my boys. His father said it's a scary time for men. There was a comment over here in the chat where he was one of the, I think it was who said it? I think it was Steve. He said, I'm going to get my son to carry a condom and a consent form. I heard another guy talking. He's like, well, now I have to talk to my son when he goes to college. I have to tell him to be careful so he doesn't get falsely accused. Okay, I have to tell my son to, not to drink too much and to watch his behavior at parties. Like I have to. So the thing is, the kind of precautions. The tweet says, for years, girls were told not to. Now boys are being told
Wait,
not to.
so
There are conversations. No, no, let me finish.
okay, okay.
There's a conversation that the men are having with their college-bound sons as they go to college, right? Because they're and women too. Their mothers are also having these conversations that hey, be careful, just don't get busted in this whole false accusation thing. It seems to be happening a lot, and they think it seems to be happening a lot. They're driven by that fear, so they're actually telling their boys now the same kind of things that parents used to tell girls, like, oh, don't drink too much, you'll get raped. Now, those parents are wrong when they told them it shouldn't matter how much a girl drinks. It shouldn't matter if a boy wants to drink or whatever. What they should be telling them is that don't rape, right? But just like a lot of
I
girls
mean,
were told these
if I
things for
have a
ages.
daughter, I might tell her. I'm not going to tell her don't rape. I'm going to tell her how to be careful. Just
Yeah, of
telling my
course.
daughter,
That's common
tell
sense.
me my daughter be careful is not victim blaming. Okay.
Yeah, I agree with you. I would do the same thing. And then, but the thing is now it's also good. There are people telling their sons, like when he said, the commenter, that I'm going to give my kid a consent form and a condom. I don't see that as a bad thing. I think that that's actually a good thing. That'll protect a lot of people, and it will also prevent. Lower his chances of getting falsely accused.
Right.
Neither of
Okay.
these
So,
things are good.
but you have to
It's for
say
the long
yeah.
for the longest time, women were told this stuff and men had impunity. But now it's a good thing that boys are also being told this stuff,
But
and both of them are conscious about the idea of consent. The idea of consent is now out in the open, right? It's
so
a
you're
common
saying you're not
conversation. It's
blaming.
not as
So
controversial.
you're saying you're not blaming the victim. You're saying that just like you would tell. So wait, I think we both just contradicted each other, right? Because I said I would tell my daughter to be careful, and that's not victim blaming. So that
Yeah, I
kind of
would do the same.
so I just recognize that I contradicted myself, right? Because I accuse you of victim blaming when you're saying it's good to tell your boys to be careful,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I don't think. I
So
think it's
you're
good
saying
to tell them to be careful.
so you're saying you're not saying that. Okay, so but here's the thing: by putting these things next to each other, you're saying it seems like you're saying that it's fair game for shit to happen to boys because of the shit that happened to women. Do you know what I mean? Do you see how
No, no. I'm saying that it's fair game for boys to also be have in the back of their mind that they need to be careful about certain things, the way the
right?
girls have had that in the
But do you
back of
see
their
how
mind
that comes?
for a very long time.
But especially with the hashtag that you put there, right there, it comes off as that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, do you see how like saying like, oh, women had it tough for so long, which is true. Now let men get a little bit of shit.
Yeah, I
Do,
agree with you on the hashtag thing because the
yeah.
hashtag was satirical and it was in the context of that woman's hashtag and it was trending. So
But
it's not something that will
do you
stand the
agree
test of time.
that people say like if people say well Group A had got shit for so long, to make things fair a little bit, let Group B get a little bit of taste of that.
Yeah,
Do you think?
I
Do you
don't
agree that
I
that's
don't agree with
do you
that.
agree that that's nonsense?
No, I agree that that's nonsense because
Yeah.
that's retributive.
Right.
But what I think is different is this is something about human nature. Okay, human nature is like the number one reason people don't commit certain crimes
Mm.
is because there are consequences. Now, it would be wonderful if people didn't commit those crimes because they knew that hey, murder is wrong. No, a theft is wrong. I shouldn't be vandalizing property. If everybody thought that way, that'd be amazing. So when people say that, oh, tell your sons not to rape or whatever, rapists are going to rape. I don't know how effective that is as a strategy, but I think that to be able to prevent these things, you need consequences. If you murder somebody, you're going to get caught. You're going to go to jail. The thing with rape is that for the longest time, first of all, rape is a very unique crime. Rape, if you look at it, right, just the physicality of it, murder does not have any analog in normal life. Okay, rape can look exactly like what human beings do normally, right? It's indistinguishable. Even
Yeah.
if you have violent rape and you have BDSM sex with consent, they can look identical. If you have date
I didn't.
rape and you have
Okay,
consensual
let's.
sex,
Okay, let's not get into that. I
no,
mean,
no, no.
mm,
The reason I'm saying it, the reason that this is important, is that that's what makes the accusations so hard to prove. If someone murders somebody, you can say, "Hey, murdered somebody." This is completely out of the. Nobody ever sees this, right? It's shocking to everybody. But if there is an element of rape, right, like Gian Gamishi, you can
right.
just say, "No, we were into BDSM. She consented," and then it's a he said, she said thing. So because of that, for the longest time, a lot of when women would get raped, most of them would not report it. They still,
Yeah.
to
I
this
mean,
day,
okay.
the
Let me.
vast majority of rapes go unreported because it's too much of a hassle for
Yeah.
them to come out and prove it, right?
It's not
So
just hassle; it's psychological trauma. And
yeah,
I know. I mean, here's
that's what I meant. But yeah,
here's. I don't know if I mentioned this on this podcast, but when I one time when I was coming back from school, um, and this was like I think it was still in my teen years. Um, I think I mentioned it to you in this podcast. I mean this was not rape. This was molestation. I think, but the taxi driver put his hands on my leg and he starts rubbing my leg, and I'm like,
yeah,
get. I want to get out, and he was like, "No, I'll take you wherever you want." I'm like, "No, I'm gonna get the fuck out of here, right?" And I like just right here, right here. Like, where do you want to go? I'm like, right here, and he just stops, and I get out of the car, and it was such a shitty experience that I didn't tell anyone, right? Like I thought so humiliated. I thought so, like, and I think I would have preferred if I was beaten up by like 10 guys. I don't know why. I don't know what's about our brains that I would have preferred pain over that. Like I didn't tell my parents. If I was beaten up by a whole bunch of people, I would have told my parents. But this was so embarrassing. I didn't think this can happen to like I felt so like you feel like you're not a man, really a man, when somebody can do this to you, right? So I didn't at that point. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell my parents, right? And this was nothing compared to what a lot of other people. I mean, this was not rape. This was just child molestation. Very short. And I was at least old enough at that point to, like, I wasn't old, but I was still a kid. But I was old enough to
how old
be.
were you?
Let me see. This was in Shiraz. This was in Ehsan school. So 5 years of elementary school. This would be. Hold on, just
A
one second.
roundabout ballpark.
5 plus 7, that would be 13, 15. I think 16 or 15. I'm not sure.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, 15.
yeah. Go ahead.
But maybe 16. But yeah, but when um, if I was a girl, maybe I wouldn't have said anything, and I don't know where this guy would have taken me, or if I was younger, right? I don't know.
Yeah. But what if
But
the driver was a girl? Would you have felt as bad?
well, probably not. But hold on, let me get my point. My
Uh-huh.
point is that, I mean, I know this. A lot of people are like, oh, why didn't you say it right away? Like, why these women spent 30 took them 30 years to say it? Well, I mean, I don't know what's happened psychologically there, but I know that not many people want to talk about this shit, right? Unless they really feel like they have to, or unless their mindset changed in a way that they think, well, that's not embarrassing at all. I didn't do anything, right?
Hmm.
So like my mindset now is completely different. I don't care about being perceived masculine or like anything like that, right? So it's nothing to me, right? So I don't feel humiliated by going through an experience like that, right? Me at that age felt completely differently, but it doesn't matter. The thing is, our brain works in mysterious ways, and we don't know why we don't are not comfortable talking about these things. The point, by the way, I want to address some things in the live chat. People are saying that I read your tweet completely differently than how they see it. But you admit that the hashtag makes it seem like you're basically making fun of one
yeah.
side over the other one, right?
The hashtag can make it confusing because that was an in the moment thing.
Right.
But I think overall, the rest of the tweet to me, I still stand by it.
Another reason,
but I want to
go on. But before we get, I'm gonna let you speak. But before we get there, another reason why I read it the way I did was because the other tweet that you posted with this lady with the what is this, a small guitar or ukulele?
Ukulele.
Yeah, ukulele.
Yeah, ukulele.
All right, so I'm gonna play that after you talk about this. But I saw this first tweet after I saw this one, so for me that's what gave it a little bit more context. But that's why I also was thinking that the way you're looking at it is basically anti one side for the other one. But that's another reason why I read your tweet the way I read it. But
yeah, I think that, look, when people say it's a scary time for men, first of all, I don't think it's that scary a time for men. Like I just really don't think so. I think that
no, but nobody. Okay, it doesn't have to be
all
the end
that's happening now.
It doesn't have to be the end of the world for men, which I think a lot of people are exaggerating, right? For you to acknowledge that some of this is fucking nonsense. You know what I mean?
Okay, so let's talk about the stuff that's nonsense. Okay,
right.
That I think is nonsense. Let's see how much you agree with. Okay, I think that first of all, Dylan earlier on here was talking about the stats in favor of stats for rampant assaults on colleges. Sorry, excuse me. Hold on, I'm going to mute while I cough. We had renovations at our house. Hold on. Which means lots of dust everywhere. Anyway, so he's talking about the stats. So the FBI stats, if you go on Wikipedia about it, the standard thing basically from law enforcement agencies is this a false accusation, as in false reports actually lodged with the police and et cetera, or taken to court or whatever. They turn out to be around about 5%. Okay, on average, it's about 5%. 5% isn't a lot, yeah, it's still a minority, but it's still quite a bit, considering the amount.
5% is what? Sorry.
There's a 5%, the number of false accusations of rape.
Okay, there's so many different studies, by the way. I saw 2%, I saw 10%, I saw 5%, I saw.
There's one that says 33%.
Yeah,
okay, this is all kinds, but okay. I'm talking about like statistics from the FBI, from the Los Angeles police.
Let's go with that one. What is
like
that? How much
so those are so I'm kind of filtering out all of the other stuff and the activist groups and everything, and I'm coming down to just basically law enforcement agencies.
So how much?
And they report stats of approximately 5%.
5%,
right?
But do you agree that saying believe all women could increase that from 5% to like 7%?
I think that so I not only that, but I think first of all there are many cases in which I think false accusation rates go higher. Okay, so I'll give you one example. That's a cultural example, and this is something I've gone through. When women get divorced in countries like Pakistan, almost every divorced woman, well, a majority of them, whenever you hear about them, their parents always tell you that they got divorced because their husband used to beat them up. Now, the problem is that it is true that in Pakistan, domestic abuse and men beating their wives is a huge epidemic. It's in all those societies, it's unfortunately very, very common. But in a lot of these cases, I know that that it's not the case. Okay, and the reason that it's not the case is, first of all, there's some cases where I knew. I'm not going to get into details, and I've also been through this, so that's another reason I know. But what happens there is that there is a stigma with divorce. So a girl who gets divorced, if the parents say, because they have arranged marriages there, if they say, well, no, she got divorced because she didn't like the guy anymore and she got out of it, then she'll never get married again because people will think, oh, she's hard to get along with. She decides she wants to leave and she just leaves. But if other people hear, oh, her husband used to beat her up, she was a victim, it wasn't her fault, there's a higher chance of her being able to get remarried because divorce is so stigmatized. A divorced girl is so stigmatized. So you'll see very high rates of false accusations of domestic abuse in a situation like that, right? That's one example. Second example is if someone has a lot of money, right? Celebrities will,
Okay, get to the point though. What's the point?
No, we're talking about why the false accusation thing. I do think that it's higher in some cases. Like people who are celebrities, where there's something to be gained, they will most likely see high rates of false accusation. The other thing is false accusations. These 5% rates, they don't include celebrities being
okay,
falsely
but we don't know. Okay,
right?
we don't
or
know,
people being falsely
that's
accused.
not
on
very
media.
important. Yeah, we don't know. We don't know exactly what.
No,
what
this is important. I want to say this because what I'm talking about.
But the thing is that the fact that it could be 2%, the lowest I've seen is 2%. The highest I've seen, well, I think we could dismiss that one because it's just too high. There was 60%. I think that's insane.
Right. So I just want to let me tell you where I'm going with this. Let me tell you where I'm going with this.
Okay, but the thing is, because we don't know, let's say, I think it's based on the credible ones, it's between 2 and 10%. Okay.
Whatever the case is, it's a small minority compared to the number of actual assaults that happen.
But the thing is that even if it's a 0.5%. That means that we have to investigate, right?
We have to investigate. That's
right.
why the legal system exists. Legal system doesn't exist because the majority of people the legal system, like the reason you have defense attorneys is because they have to consider that 2%, 5%, whatever percent chance. Right. Now that happens, right? These false accusation things, they do happen. So I don't think when people say believe all women, even most of the women who say this, right? They don't say believe all women automatically.
Isn't that insulting to women to make them seem like they're incapable
no,
of lying?
No, that's not what it is. The majority of people, I think what it is mostly it's a misnomer. Okay, so what happens?
It's treating them like this pure, I mean.
No. The idea is that anytime an accusation comes up, you take it seriously.
Yes,
so if there was a hashtag,
of course. No, the hashtag should have been take all accusations seriously.
Take all accusations seriously.
The hashtag should be do not ignore women or do not ignore accusations. Investigate all accusations.
Not only do not ignore, but now the reason that the believe part of it, the reason that got
investigate all accusations. Take them all seriously. Do not dismiss them. That should have been the hashtag.
So that's where I agree with you. So I think that the Believe All Women has made this a little bit tougher and gotten a lot of opposition from places that you would have otherwise done.
So much that is actually hurting the case of women with
I don't think I don't think overall it's hurting the case. I think this is if it depends on where you are.
There's always an overcorrection, and there's going to be overcorrection. There's going to be overcorrection to the overcorrection.
Generally the mainstream, the majority of people are pretty awake to this. If you talk to the majority of university students and everything, they're pretty okay with the whole belief thing. It has negative consequences, and there's a lot of collateral damage because I think it's a misnomer. And I think that if it said, take all accusations seriously, that would be better. But the context of it is that generally when a woman comes up and she says, I get catcalled once a week, or that I have been assaulted several times in my life, or I can't walk down the street without being catcalled, which is very common, and it's actually quite true, right? In a lot of places. Then usually men decide to say, oh, come on. They initially don't believe it. They're like, she's just saying it to get attention. There's a lot of guys who think that way.
Yeah,
that's why the whole believe thing came in. Now, here's the thing. The interesting thing is the people who deny it are sometimes the good guys. And I'll tell you why. Okay, so I have a friend, me and one of my friends, we were hanging out. Alishba was with me and his girlfriend was with him. And Alishba and her were talking about how they go out in Toronto, and every time they pass by a hospital, construction site, something like that, they almost always get catcalled. And then so he asked her, he's like, well, how often does that happen? They're like, well, at least a couple, 2-3 times a week. And then he's like, no, come on. That's too much. It can't happen that often. You're exaggerating, right? He didn't think that it could be that high. Now, the interesting is, so they got upset with him. They're like, why are you not believing us, right? But the interesting thing is he was actually a good guy because he is the kind of guy who doesn't catcall anybody. So he was thinking, I don't do that. How could there be other men who do that? So the reason that he was having a hard time believing it is because he genuinely was one of those guys who doesn't do these things a lot. So
Right.
the whole thing seems really, really outlandish.
Yeah.
But I think that now that I'm seeing,
Well, he went beyond withholding judgment. He actually made a claim. He said
right.
it doesn't happen. He said it couldn't happen. That's not just.
No, he said it can't happen as often as
okay.
you're saying.
That's making a claim. That's not withholding judgment until you have evidence. That's actually making a new claim without evidence.
Yeah, that's but I mean, when the evidence thing comes in when you go to a court of law, we're talking about somebody like you're
I mean,
one of your friends.
even without a court of law. Sorry, guys. I mean, as Alex Alex is pointing out that I'm interrupting you too much. I agree. I'm gonna try to not to interrupt. But Ali goes on
I think it's fine. I think it's fine.
But no, but Alex is right. Sorry, Alex. I'll try to. But when you go on for too long, I'm gonna interrupt sometimes. Okay. But I just think. Okay, so a lot of people think that when you say you withhold judgment, that means you're calling bullshit on something. No, withholding judgment means you're withholding judgment. Calling bullshit on something is also a claim. If you say,
Armin, withholding judgment is also when you say take all accusations seriously, that's different from just withholding judgment. Because withholding judgment means that okay, I'm skeptical about it. You could be lying. I don't know. Right?
No, not this. No, I mean, I'm okay.
Yeah, if you came up to me and you said that, okay, listen, this thing happened to me when I was younger with that cab driver,
I mean,
or whatever.
If you say you could, that doesn't mean that you think the possibility is high. No, but no, okay, so
and if I told you I'm gonna withhold judgment, okay, Armin, thank you for sharing that, but I have to withhold judgment.
No, okay. So basically, it's the way it's perceived, right? And you could say the same thing in different ways, and people will perceive it differently. And because people will perceive it differently, you should take the responsibility in communicating it properly, right? So somebody could come to me and say, like, hey, somebody just stole my wallet, right? Mm-hmm. And I could say, well, I don't believe you, right? Or I could say like, oh shit, let's investigate this, right? Or I know let's investigate. Let's take. Okay, let's
investigate what?
Like
the fact that his wallet was stolen?
Yeah, or something. I'm just saying that you could.
No. This is
not a good example, right? So my point is that you could say like you could tell somebody that we're not going to believe you until we have evidence, or you could say that okay, this is serious. This is serious. We need to let's go. We're gonna use all our resources to bring find evidence for this
just
accusation.
To investigate it.
Yeah. But the thing is that those two are the same position. They're
not.
No, they are the same position because you're basically the second one you're saying like, well, we need evidence to be able to move forward.
But and the second one,
one of them, but the victim will perceive them differently. Like if you say.
Okay, so let's go with that. Yeah.
So because most of the victim, you want to be considerate to the victim, you're gonna say the second one, even though it's the same thing as the first one. If you tell the victim, well, we can't believe you until we have evidence, you're gonna make a lot of victims that are at a very emotionally vulnerable position. You're gonna kick them while they're down. So you don't do that.
You just made an excellent argument for why the word believe got into that.
Right.
Hashtag.
No, but
okay?
but you don't have you don't have to lie to people. You don't have to say false things just because they're emotionally vulnerable. You say something else, which is basically the same as the first thing, but puts the victim at a better position. You tell them, "Holy shit! Yes, this is important. We're gonna listen to you. We're gonna take you seriously. We're gonna investigate, and we're gonna find the evidence for."
We believe you.
No, that's what you don't say.
Armin.
All of the stuff that I said, all of the stuff that I said is gonna put the victim is gonna feel taken care of. It's not gonna contradict the shitty phrasing of the true stuff that I said at the beginning, which we won't believe anything until we have evidence. It's just in a different way. You're saying the same thing without kicking the victim while they're down. You know what I mean?
No, I know.
You don't use the word believe because then you're lying to them. You can't just believe people.
But do you see how delicate that argumentation is?
Yes, but that's
like you're saying everything except I believe you. So here's the thing.
Okay, but Even if you don't believe without evidence, you don't go tell that to the victims, okay? You don't say it like that to the victims. You just tell them that we will investigate this and we will find the evidence to bring the people that did this to justice, right?
So you're assuming that there were people who did this?
No, if they, I mean,
Or the people who potentially did this?
no. Okay, so here's the thing: if they didn't do this, then the people that did this do not exist. So I'm still being consistent. Okay.
You're being
I'm being consistent without making the victims feel bad.
I completely get what you're saying. Like I'm saying, I think that the hashtag should be take accusations more seriously. But what happens is that there is this whole idea of that, okay, I believe that this happened. I don't know that it happened for sure. I believe that it happened. Those are two different things. It's like, what we say about believing in God and whether knowing that he's there or not. I don't know he's there or not, but I don't believe in him. So the thing is, I can say to somebody...
Here's the thing. The problem is that now we have overcorrection, right? Like, our position was like, don't believe until you have evidence, right? And now, because of this whole believe all women, now we have a nonsense from the other side that, oh no, they're probably lying. Where did the fuck, where did that come from? We didn't have that before. This is the overcorrection from the other side. So we have this nonsense from this side saying believe all women. And now we have a nonsense from the other side, which is another claim of itself without evidence. Like, oh, they're probably lying. Like, that's also nonsense, right? But one nonsense, each of these nonsense feeds the other nonsense. You know what I mean? But
I want to read out another...
Go on.
Another thing that I wrote this is from September 21st, 2014.
Okay.
And there was this, I don't know, some sort of thing going on like this.
Read the live chat. People have lots of interesting
No, I will,
comments.
but this is something that I wrote then. And I said, believe the victim who says he or she was raped. They're telling the truth unless there's evidence to the contrary, and is innocent until proven guilty. Believe the accused who says he or she is innocent. They're telling the truth unless there is evidence to the contrary, innocent until proven guilty. So I do understand that. Like, this is something that I think that it is possible. I think believing something and knowing that it happened are two totally different things. So I am even though I don't completely agree with the wording of it, I do think that there is merit to, I think, this idea where people are less skeptical and they're saying, okay, I want to take all these accusations seriously. I'm not going to immediately dismiss it like it could be fake. I think that's different. I think that it is good that more men are looking out now. There's a lot of guys talking about this. Oh, I have to be careful now when I talk to a girl. I have to make sure I don't say the wrong thing.
So you're saying it's good because for their own sake, so that people can't accuse them falsely?
I think it's good for everybody. I think it's good for the women. I think it's good for them too, because there's a lot of guys who say they're talking about the rules.
Like, are you worried? Okay, so I'm gonna put my lefty hat on. So you're worried about men? Like, you're saying, is that why you're happy that they're now gonna No, I'm not talking about the rapists. I'm talking about the ones that get falsely accused.
For me, this isn't about the men what they're going through or the women or anything.
No,
I'm happy that people are talking about
your tweet. In your tweet, okay?
Yeah.
Are you basically happy that men that could have been falsely accused, okay? Not talking about the rapists, right? Mm-hmm. Men that could have been falsely accused, are you happy that they're now going to behave in a way? I'm not talking about behaving in a way that they're not going to be raping or abusing women, because I'm talking about men that we have never done that. Are you based on your tweet? Okay, let me just bring it up one more time, right?
Yeah, so you're saying, I get what you're saying. Am I happy that they're...
Wait, hold on. Let me finish, right? Now boys are being told not to drink too much, keep their distance, and behave so they don't get falsely accused. So let's remove the men that are the asshole enough to actually rape somebody or molest somebody, right? Or do something insane like that. You're among men that would have never done something like that. You're happy that these men are now going to drink less, keep their distance, and behave in a way so that they also don't get falsely accused. Are you saying that?
No, I'm happy that overall society...
Based on that tweet, though. Sorry.
Based on that tweet.
Okay.
This tweet is about a societal attitude. I'm happy that based on all of this conversation that's going on based on the fact that women are coming out and speaking. I'm happy that society knows now that this is something, right? Doing things without consent is something that can have consequences for both boys as well as
That's not
girls.
what
And I'm
you're.
happy. No, no, that's what I meant by it. And a lot of people did get that. A lot of people, in fact, there are people in the chat who said it right now that they understand that as what I meant by it. So I am happy that overall people are understanding that this dialogue is getting more balanced. That rape is a bad thing, false accusation is a bad thing. Just like before, people they were overprotective of their daughters. Now people are overprotective of their sons. But what they're doing is the ultimate effect is that
So
everybody's getting this idea. Everybody's getting this idea of what consent means. People are talking not only to their girls about it, they're also talking to their boys about it, right?
okay, so
Because there are
do you think
consequences
that
for
men
both.
that would not, among the men that would have never done something like this, do you think that, do you suggest to them, sorry about that, do you suggest to them that they should also behave in a way, go beyond actually not raping anybody and not mistreat, like that's not good enough, they also should behave in a way that they can't even get accused of it? Like, are you do you, is that how far you think they need to go?
No, that would be blaming the victim. I think that if you're talking about false
but
accusations, that would be blaming the victim.
but to
That's
be,
not what I'm
no,
talking about.
I'm not, that's not blaming the victim. Actually, I'm actually now defending you, because if we said that telling our daughter that I don't have, that um, to be mindful, to be careful because there are dangerous men around, that's not really blaming the victim.
No, that's not blaming the victim.
So if that's not blaming the victim, then this is also not blaming the victim, right?
Oh, okay. I get what you're saying. Sorry,
So
I
if
misunderstood. I thought you
so
were
for example,
saying,
okay, so for
yeah.
example, if my wife comes to me and be like, "Hey, there seems to be a lot of accusations going around," uh, people might point a finger at you as well. So maybe when you're like, even though you would never do something like this, maybe even don't give the impression that you might like do something like this. Like, if you, is that victim blaming?
No, I think that's being careful.
Okay,
I've been told that too by like this is it's something that
so
I think that's a good thing.
okay,
The thing is, there's consequences for the long time. For a long time, there's consequences. The threat of consequences only on one side. Now there's a threat of consequences on both. And unfortunately, the way that human nature works, the way that law enforcement works, is consequences prevent crimes. The reason the majority of rapes go unreported is because women don't come out and report.
And false
Wait, 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 wait.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no, women don't go report. The majority of them don't. So men usually don't have consequences. A lot of guys who went out and they just kind of grope women in class for fun or whatever, they knew that they'd never get reported. There were no consequences. Now that they know that there are consequences, and there isn't really such a thing as someone who would never do this. There are people who can get drunk. They can do. Everybody is capable of
There are
doing
people
stupid
that would
shit.
never do something like this.
Of course there are,
Okay,
but there is somebody like for instance, like if there's somebody who's really young, a kid who was never told this stuff, he goes to college. By the time he's older, he might do something like that. On the other hand, if he is told from he's younger, just like don't smoke, don't smoke, don't smoke, and fewer millennials have smoke now than ever before. In the same way, if you just say things like, okay, now you're telling your boys, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. And supposing it's a false accusation fear that's driving you, the message still gets through.
okay, but I don't know why we're saying this, because I don't think there's anybody. I mean, this is another problem with this conversation, because every time we're talking about the overcorrections, people always say, well, it's a good thing that people that are actually more people are realizing that consent is important. I just want to. What is that a response to? Because as they're like, is anybody here claiming that that's not a good thing? Like, is anybody claiming that actual rapists and actual molesters and actual scumbags and getting in trouble is not a good thing? Or is anybody claiming that people being aware about how to properly, consent being so important, like people that maybe nobody didn't have proper upbringing now realizing this is not a good thing? I mean, every time when we have this conversation, that's a response, and I'm always like, well, who are you responding to? Because I don't hear like we're not nobody. I mean, nobody at least in this conversation is saying that's a negative thing. You know, well, I
Hmm.
mean, I'm hoping that we are beyond understanding that yes, rapists getting people getting the consequences of raping. That's a progress. Like more people getting justice. That's
Yeah, that's
progress.
that's that's all it is.
Right.
It's his
No,
balance. I
that's not
think that's
all
a,
it is because we're talking about some details around this that is not. I mean, that's we agree on, and I think
uh,
that's so basic that we don't even. I don't
look.
know even know why we're discussing it.
I think that the collateral damage stuff sucks. I think that there's a lot of people who got burned with it. A lot of liberals actually got burned with it. Al Franken, who I really liked, right? He got burned because of he got caught up in the whole Me Too movement. He resigned.
Wait,
He
didn't
was one
he
of the.
actually like post pictures of
He
somebody
posted a
with?
picture of like his hands like doing. Yeah, it was a stupid joke, but he it wasn't assault, right? And
Right,
he got
right,
slammed because of it. Aziz Ansari got caught up in the whole thing. We had that whole conversation with Lishba
right.
in that podcast about how that really was more of a bad date, and he was just more creepy than really a predator or anything. But so there has been collateral damage, and that's always unfortunate. But anytime you have a big movement or something, a big conversation like this happens, it usually goes to an extreme, then it goes to the other extreme, and there's a lot of
And
dialogue, then
actually,
it reaches an equilibrium. That's just the nature of social movements. I mean, that's how they happen.
Beach actually
It
said
always has happened that way.
Beach said the exact same thing in the live chat. She said the pendulum swings until it gets to a resting place. That is true,
Yeah,
but that's
yeah.
kind of a naturalistic fallacy because the fact that the pendulum swings and it happens all the time doesn't mean that we can't make it stop faster. I mean, I'm not saying you're saying that, Beach, but I'm saying that just because we see it happen doesn't mean that we need to let it swing for longer. If you're on one side of this and you could like hold on to the pendulum and not swing, let it
We would love
overswing.
that.
Yeah. So I'm
Armin,
just
I would love that. Yeah.
yeah. So
I
I'm
would
just
love
saying.
that that would
I'm
happen,
just.
but that's
But
just
well,
not
my
how.
point is that just because it often swings, that doesn't mean that we can't stop it from swinging earlier.
Mhm.
Then yeah.
Yeah, some people here, like Adam and these guys, they're talking about Kavanaugh, and that's another thing I want to bring up. That people talk about believing all women and all this stuff, but this isn't. The majority of stuff that's happened in this Me Too thing is not for lack of evidence. These people, like Louis C.K. and Kevin Spacey and all these, who I'm a huge fan of, a lot of these guys. Excuse me, I know that's terrible, but the cough I'm talking about. Um, these are not people who these are people who came out and confessed. They actually said they did what they did,
Yeah,
right?
and they
With
should get punished.
yeah, hold on, I'm gonna mute my.
But Blonde Infidel. By the way, is this really Blonde Infidel or is this Blonde Infidel's husband? Because I know it could be either one of them. But Blonde Infidel is saying.
Gender isn't real. It's okay. It could be either.
No,
Yeah,
I know he uses his wife's account sometimes. So
yeah.
Blonde Infidel is saying, Ali Rizvi, yes, there are more consequences for men now. Well, there are more consequences for rapists, which is a good thing, and nobody denies that. Breach saying, I never called the police for being groped, but the attempted rape I did call, but no proofs. Cops knew the guy though. I think they roughed him up. Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, and I know that doesn't necessarily make things better when you've been through something like that. So I'm really sorry you went through that, Beach. But yeah, there is. I do think for the longest time people were telling women that they not you don't have to report if you don't have to, if you don't want to. There was that going on. I think that should probably change. And I say that as a guy because I know that the number one thing that will prevent men from doing this is going to be consequences. If they know that there are consequences, and one of the reasons is because law enforcement can't really follow through on this because they always look for evidence. The court cases are really rough. The accusers are often who are victims are often really, really brutally cross-examined. There's all these women who don't want to go through that. So when law enforcement can't really come up and live up to the job, then you have something like social media where there are women who go out and they make these public accusations. The downside, of course, there's a website I read about some university that has an anonymous website where women are just coming out and saying anonymously, people coming out and saying this person is a rapist. some guy. They're just naming them publicly. And I think that's insane. That's absolute insanity. That's going to harm the real victims of it, as Armin said earlier,
Right.
right? And, you
But
do have these things, but ultimately, even that website, they tempered it. They're like, okay, at least the people who run the website should know who the accuser is, and you can't do it anonymously. So even those things are sort of being tempered down, and there's already an equilibrium happening. The other thing, like with Brett Kavanaugh, there was.
wait, can I respond to something though before
Yeah.
you? Uh, I just want to clarify. I know a lot of people now that like me because I push back on Yali. They're gonna get disappointed because I do think that it's obvious that the Me Too campaign has done way more good than harm. Okay, the thing is that most most of these crimes go unpunished because a lot of people think that it's not worth speaking out, right? That they're not going to be taken seriously, right? And this whole Me Too campaign is going to the negative side of it is that some people are going to think like, okay, now I can get revenge by falsely accusing somebody, but that's very minor compared to the whole bunch of people that didn't speak out, that did get, abused, that now going to have the courage to actually do speak out, right? But that doesn't mean that we don't have to speak about those minor overcorrections, because correcting those minor overcorrections helps even more give more credibility to the real ones. Do you know what I mean? Like if we could at the same time encourage more people to come and speak out, people that actually been abused, and at the same time discourage false accusations, because even if it's 2%, if that 2% increases to 5%, it's really going to hurt the other cases. If you could discourage the false accusations while encouraging the real accusations, I think it makes it worth our while to actually speak out against a false accusation.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that that's a really good example of that was the Aziz Ansari case. So when that thing happened and he was thrown in with the likes of Harvey Weinstein and all these guys, right? Then people came to his defense. There were people who were heavily involved in the Me Too movement who wrote, I mean, the Washington Post wrote about it, the New Yorker wrote about it, Barry Weiss in the New York Times wrote about it. They all wrote about how that wasn't really part of it. They have to bring nuance to it. When Matt Damon came out and he said that, okay, come on, there's a difference between, there's a gradation, that both things are horrible, but a slap on the ass is very different from what Harvey Weinstein did, rape, and he got slammed for it. Now, most people are coming out and saying, including women, the Me Too movement, that he is right. There are gradations, and when we don't make those distinctions, and this is the women in Me Too who are saying it, when we don't make those gradations, it actually hurts the movement, right? So that kind of nuance is necessary. So initially, when the thing first came out, and it was a really big deal, and anytime there was a single accusation, the person's entire life was destroyed, and so on, and then Al Franklin had to resign from the Senate, all that stuff. When these things happened, that was that was, I think, when there was a lot of momentum, and it was a huge storm. Then later, the storm settled, and it turned from a fight into an activist-driven fight into a conversation.
We have a lot of Patreon comments. So after this, go through the conversation. Yeah.
So one thing I wanted to say before we go to the patron questions is the Brett Kavanaugh thing. Like, people say, well, she was lying, this and that. There's two things. First of all, if you want to do a false accusation, and not only do you say it in public, but you go out and you press charges, and you go in front of the Senate, and you talk about it in front of everybody when you're a professor at the university, and you've passed a lie detector test that you are willing to take, that is an incredible amount of that takes a lot of balls to go out and make a false accusation that way. And the other thing is that there is a lot of evidence, not conclusive.
That's using Occam's razor, which is fine. I mean, it's not evidence, but it's Occam's.
No, actually, it is. In rape cases, corroborative evidence, the way they say corroborating evidence, is more like finding two fossils like
I
2
mean, I'm
million
not
years
against you.
apart,
I mean, I'm
and
not
there's
using.
gaps in the middle, but you can still put the whole story together. You can connect the dots. So
No, I mean
that's what.
that's not evidence. That's Occam's razor, but I'm not dismissing it because Occam's razor is usually a good way to figure out what's.
No, but it's actually evidence too. So it's actually considered to be corroborating evidence. Like for instance, the guy, if she says, okay, I saw this guy and there was this other guy in the room, Mark Judge, and he worked at a supermarket. If that guy is real and he did work at that supermarket, which he did, that actually counts legally as corroborating evidence.
Okay.
So when people say there was no corroborating evidence, that's not necessarily legally
Okay.
true.
There was
Let's go to patron questions.
Yeah, there was a second tweet. I don't know if we're gonna have time for that second tweet because there's so much comments. Do you want to go through them? And if we have time, then we'll go through look at the second tweet here. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
sure.
go.
And I'll tell you the other thing I really got in trouble for after this.
Okay, but let's
But let's do this. Okay, so
the good thing is that
guys,
it's
I'm going to
mostly
go back
mostly comments than questions. So just go through the question ones, right?
Okay, so first of all, Uday is asking. Some of these are unrelated. I'll just go through them anyway because I want to thank you guys for all being here. So Uday is saying, I have one question: why do ex-Muslims become like yourself, atheists, and not agnostic like Neil deGrasse Tyson? We're agnostic atheists. We're both,
Neil deGrasse Tyson is an atheist, even if he doesn't like the label. He doesn't believe in God. That makes him an atheist. He's an agnostic atheist. I have an article about that on Atheist Republic. Agnosticism versus atheism. They're not mutually exclusive. You could be agnostic and atheist at the same time. I can link to it.
Yeah, atheist just simply means you don't believe in God. Agnostic means you don't know for sure if God exists. That's it.
Yeah, I'll send a link to it here in the live chat.
Yeah.
So you could go read that.
And I'm both. Let's see if there's more. There's a lot of comments.
Go through the questions, not the comments.
Okay, unless the comments are really good. Okay, so Stephen is asking, do you know of any ex-Muslim comedians? Any chance you could get one on the show?
Vito Vids, we should have...
I talked to Vito Vids, and we're going to get him on the show.
And can you get the apostate prophet and the masked Arab as well?
Yeah. So, Stephen's saying that we're funny, and I think it helps. Any chance of a Monty Python-style mockery of Islam from ex-Muslims? Oh, stay tuned. we can have a lot of fun with that. There are ex-Muslim comedians actually. Aziz Ansari is one of them. We mentioned him. So Aziz Ansari is actually, it was interesting. The way that I found out he was an atheist is because there was a New York Times story that was covering him, that he came from a Muslim family. They described him as a Muslim. Then there was a correction issued later that said that, we previously described Aziz Ansari as a Muslim, but he is not. He is an atheist. So apparently he called him, he corrected it. So there are sort of very, very, there are secular comedians. I actually know 2 or 3 of them, but they're not publicly out. And one of them is extremely well known.
Next one. Sorry.
Yeah, there's. Thanks.
Conspel is saying that where is the Sam Harris podcast? Well, the public version of it is going to be released soon. Remember
in the next few days.
So in the next few days. Remember, our patrons get the video version, and they get the the video is not very interesting this time because it was just Sam was audio. It was just me and Ali on video. But they get it ahead of everyone else. But eventually, the public and the free version of it will be released on on iTunes and Stitcher and all the other podcast apps.
Yeah.
But go on.
Okay, so Dylan is saying a consent form, so people have to carry consent forms just to have sex now. No, they don't. But I think that if they're more mindful of the idea of consent and making sure that they're actually getting it, I don't think that's a bad thing. There's an analog to this. People are like, well, now it's not going to be fun. We can't have that spontaneous where in the movies the guy just doesn't say anything, just reaches out and kisses a girl or vice versa. It kind of sucks, I guess.
You can make funny consent forms that actually makes you both laugh, and I think you could. I know this is ridiculous, obviously, but imagine if you actually make them funny and fun to go, like make consent forms that is actually legally binding, right? But at the same time, it's so humorous that going through it, this is a great product idea.
You can make it hot too. You can make it you can start this is the kind of consent form to get your girl to. And I'll tell you an analog,
it cute and funny, and something that actually, instead of like something dry that will just destroy all romance, something that actually lightens up the mood before you actually get into it.
an analog for this, Dylan, is in the 80s when I was growing up. I was just when I was like a early teenager. There was condoms became the big rage because AIDS had just come out, right? So AIDS was a big thing. There's a lot of PSAs in high schools and things like that. I was in Saudi Arabia, but I was reading about them, about condom use and giving condoms out, safe sex, all that. And the complaint was the same. It's like, oh, this is going to kill sex. So you can't be spontaneous anymore. Now you have to stop and put on this rubber thing over your penis and all this other crap. But what happened is eventually they came out with flavored condoms. They found, get your partner to put it on for you, and people just incorporated it in, and it's people adjust to these things. I think it's okay. I really don't think you're going to need consent forms, but
South Park had an episode and this was funny.
Yeah, you could do something like that.
All right, go on.
So Steve is okay, no, this is a comment. Let's go on with the questions. Alex is saying, never mind which is worse. Should both boys and girls both go out and drink and get as close as they want? I think this is probably in the context of something above.
Right. All right, go on.
Yeah, I think, I
yeah.
Sure, exactly. Beej is saying, am I the only woman here? Alaric is saying...
No, Blonde Infidel is also here. So no.
Yeah, Blonde Infidel is here too. Alaric is saying, talk about Ina. Do we have to?
No.
It's boring.
Yeah, boring. Next.
I know. I'm sorry, Alaric.
Next.
Some other time. What about people who say boys are just boys? It's not that nobody says that. No, you hear that all the time. That boys are going to be boys.
And that's bullshit, I think.
That is bullshit. That just...
Like heard that a lot. Whenever I see like shitty stuff people do and say like, well, boys will just be boys, or like, well, I don't... I mean, apparently I'm not boy enough then.
Yeah, there's no...
Like
there's
locker
no
room talk. Oh, boys, when they get alone, they all talk like this. I'm like, no. No, they don't. Do they?
They don't. Yeah, it's just... that's... And the thing is, just... Yeah. Anyway,
okay.
I mean, when I was growing up, everybody around me was a jock. Like in school, like everybody's really into sports. I sucked at sports, but I used to like writing poetry, and I used to get a lot of crap for it. So since then I've always hated that boys will be boys kind of crap. Later I started turning that into songs and playing guitar, which totally changed everything. But still, I just always had an aversion to that since I was a kid. More. Adam saying our false accusations actually is rampant. So yeah, we already talked about that. And
Kate, by the way, the Atheist Muslim is Ali's book, not mine. But go on, Ali. Sorry.
Okay. Sorry, I'm going back and trying to get all the questions. I think there's more comments this time than questions.
Yeah, just look for question marks and just quickly go through all of them that don't have question marks.
Okay, so Brian is saying, also now, if I don't like any woman, I can just say she sexually assaulted me. No more due process, right? Well, I mean, there would be due process. You would say she sexually assaulted you. That would be investigated. There would be a thing. You'd go through a whole string of hoops. It depends on how far you'd want to take it. And she'd get a defense attorney. You'd go through the whole process, and that would be due process. And ultimately, if she didn't assault you, they would probably find that there's not enough evidence to say that she didn't assault you. So, yeah, I think there would be due process. But if you say it online that she assaulted you, then people will just believe whatever they want. I'll talk about my experience in a bit too. Maybe not now, maybe another time. More question marks. Oh, okay, so Brian again. Frankly, I don't care about any of this nonsense. Why? Because now that more men will become timid and afraid of women, I will continue to be my old charming self and attract more women. Less competition for me. See, that's a positive attitude.
Okay.
It's hey, Brian, I got it. If you're doing all this stuff and you're talking to women, you're respectful of them. You're not like going out and assaulting, you're not that kind of person. Then yeah, it's more power to you. I love it. I think it's great. And the fact that you are clearly from your comment, you're conscious of that there are these new possibilities and consequences, but you're still going to go out and do things because you know who you are, you're comfortable with it, you're secure about it.
But he's also suggesting that now there's going to be a lot of men that would have been able to wanted to approach women, but now they're going to be too scared of approaching women because they are afraid of accusations like that. Do you think that's a legit thing that could happen now because of all
Yeah, I
this?
think theoretically, I hear a lot of people saying, but I really don't think men are going to stop approaching women anytime soon.
No, we're not
I think they're
talking.
going to.
Okay, we're not talking about alpha males and stuff like that. I'm talking
Mhm.
about people that that have to. For them, it has to take a lot of courage. It's basically socially very exhausting for them to even ask somebody else one time on a date, and they if they say get told no to, it's like basically the worst thing that happened to them in the whole year. And now it takes another year now again to take the courage to ask a second person. Now these are like these people in between. Now they're not even gonna do the first whatever they were even trying to do. Now they're gonna be like not even gonna do that. Do you know what I mean?
I yeah, I don't see how that translate. I'm trying to think of scenarios in which you would want to try to avoid doing that. I can think of some scenarios. If you're alone with somebody in the middle of the night, if you're in a dark alley, if you're in an elevator, if you call, but if you're texting someone, there's a record of it. Usually, how do people ask each other out? They give them a call, they talk to them on the phone, they go up to their place, they meet in a public place, they meet
I'm
for
not talking
coffee.
about people that know what they're doing. Okay, I'm talking about people that.
No, but in what scenario
Hmm.
would you I gotta say something. I'm not a woman, but let me tell you something from a woman's perspective from the women that I've heard. So this is a guy telling you a secondhand women's perspective that he's heard from women he knows. Is that a lot of I've talked to women because I'm really interested in this, and that what is it that you look for when you meet a new guy? What is it that attracts you to them or makes you concerned? And the number one thing that they always tell me is security. And one of them actually told me something I'll never forget. They're like, imagine that you are you, and I'm not a super muscly guy. And they're saying, imagine that there were only two types of people in the world, and they were attracted to each other. One was these big, brawny, like gorilla type men who were super powerful, and then there was guys who looked like you. Right now, a big gorilla type man comes up to you and he asks you out on a date. Aren't you going to size him up in terms of what are you going to be most concerned about? I'm like, oh, I'm concerned about the fact that I'll be alone with him at his place, and then he could like really, beat the shit out of me or something. And they said that's kind of what it's like for women all the time. Like
You know,
we love men, but we know that there's a risk. So they
right,
tend to look out for that a lot.
right.
But what I'm saying is that what is the kind of scenario in which even a guy who's like insecure was always concerned about it. What is the kind of scenario where he would not approach a girl because he'd be afraid of a false accusation? You're talking about
Wait.
approaching, right?
Here's the thing. Not all. Okay, obviously, men are not alike, and women are not alike. This is the problem I have when people say, "Well, from a perspective of a woman," and I'm like, there is no woman perspective because women are so different, and I don't,
No, but
especially
that's why there is a perspective because they're different. There are some perspectives that are very uniquely from being a woman and being in that experience and living that way.
yeah.
That a lot of men will probably understand intellectually and they could probably talk about and defend intellectually, but they may not be able to completely
So there,
empathize.
I mean, there are some trends and some things that you could say on average is true about women, but I don't think it's the woman perspective, right, or the men perspective. Obviously men's perspective of things differ very much, and women's perspective on things differ very much, but I appreciate the fact that I mean that I mean I can see how I mean obviously I can't see unless I'm in that fucking experience, right, but knowing that there's an entire half of a species that could basically physically overpower you at any time is very intimidating, I think,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
Especially if the society itself is not protecting you, right? Like knowing that half of the population, almost half of the population, can basically physically overcome, you know, make you, force themselves on you.
Hmm. Look,
Makes
I
me
wouldn't
makes
have
me
any issue with
Right.
a girl that I just met, okay, and having her saying, okay, you want to come to my place, we go to my place. I wouldn't have any problem going to her place either. I wouldn't think twice about it.
No.
But in her case, she might think twice about it because they always say like, well, so you're not the serial killer, so you're not the rapist murderer. Like that's a very common joke because that is kind of in their mind a lot. Like for
Yeah,
me,
I mean,
what does it matter to me
even
if a
I
girl?
mean, even as a man, for you would feel like that for your wife or for your
Oh
daughters.
yeah, of
Like
course,
you
yeah.
always like you would like okay, just if you're going somewhere, make sure you give me the number of your friends and and where you're gonna be. I mean, I don't care. I just want to make sure that if you don't show up, I know where to like where to report the police. Like you always think like okay, she's the person that you love is you're not with her, she's over there, and people around her can basically do whatever the fuck they want, and you don't fear that the same way about yourself, right?
Hmm.
Because you're like, well, maybe, I mean, I probably could resist some things that she wouldn't be able to resist, right? So given that we fear that for women in our life, then it makes sense that they would fear that about themselves. I mean, like for
Yeah, okay, I get it.
you
Yeah,
know, like
so, but
my for example, when my wife's childhood story, when she told me her story and everything, I always felt so scared. Like that story was very scary for me. Like imagining, for example, um, being a 12-year-old girl in a city in a country that doesn't have that effective of a police system, and people knowing that there is no family that is going to come and get revenge, and just being in the middle of nowhere. And I just know that's such a vulnerable position for a girl to be in, and I was like, this is very scary. Like sometimes, like you feel that you got lucky, that maybe you're the
no,
sex that can't be that can be abused like that often, right? So
yeah,
I
yeah.
and
You're Armin.
the thing
The
is
good
that
thing about you is you can do that. I think to some extent
but
I
that
can do that too.
but that can
But
be communicated. I mean, you don't I
that's
mean,
the idea. That's what we want to do. The biggest thing about this is empathy,
yeah,
right? For
but
people to be
a lot of people, like, you would never understand this. Well, I will never experience it. But the whole point of communication is to make other people understand, even
I
if they
agree with
don't
you.
experience it, right?
I agree with you.
Right.
And I think that that can happen with communication. And that kind of is what I was trying to get at with the tweet is that, when you know that there are consequences to something, an issue around consent, then you would be able to understand it in a way that most people don't. And the thing is that you are unique. There's a lot of guys who are completely clueless about it. It's just it's weird. It does. Since this whole thing happened with Tinder and Bumble and all of this, all these dating apps, which I missed that whole period because I already got married and everything beforehand, before I actually got into those things. But I used to hear all these stories. Oh, this guy sent me a dick pic, or I was on a date and he just kind of pulled it out. And I was like, who are these guys? I always thought they were like outliers and freaks, but
Oh.
you sit down and now when my female friends like sometimes show me the their inboxes and the dick, like Alishba when she posted her Me Too statement, I can't tell you how many dick pics she got in her messenger thing. She even made
Really?
like a big
No, I
deal out of
mean,
one of them
even
she started
right
posting.
now, half
And
of the
I can't, I cannot, I can understand what the women are going through. I can empathize with them a lot more
right.
than I can empathize with the guy who just says, oh, I'm going to send this girl a dick pic. I cannot relate to that at all. I don't even understand where that comes from.
So yeah, I don't know what they're
Yeah.
hoping, but
But
here's the
yeah.
thing. I mean, even I mean, the difference is pretty obvious. Like a lot of people, like, oh, you never understand. Even right now, when I'm doing my activism and my wife isn't, half of the threats that I get is towards my wife.
Me too.
Even though I'm the activist, so the thing.
Hashtag me too. Yes.
No, the thing is that imagine if she was the activist, right? Like I can see like how and the threats I get is usually against my life, and the threats that they send her way is usually sexual, right? And I mean, and for some reason it's more disturbing, even though that it's not death threats.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I don't know why, but anyways, I'm just saying that we can don't the problem is that some people are like, oh, you're men, so you would not understand. That I think is That's a very
Yeah, I agree. I think,
that's a
and
very destructive way of looking at it, because you have to try harder to make us understand, right?
yeah,
Because
and
I mean, at the end of the day, we need to understand. People need to understand each other, and that
and men also have to try
the
harder to
whole point
understand.
of
It's not just
yeah, no, you
yeah,
have
the both sides. Yeah,
both sides. So yeah, obviously, so one side needs to try harder to understand, one side needs to try harder to communicate. Because if one side say like there's no point to telling you, you just have to accept it, that's not going to be helpful. And if one side is not listening, that's not helpful as well. I just think dismissing the importance of communication is going to be hurting everybody. Anyways,
and
let's
this
go
is
to
why we have this topic, is from
yeah.
the perspective of men, like kind of two guys talking about it, and I hope the women who are listening to this, I hope the fact that we're having this
I just
conversation is somewhat
I
encouraging.
just think like
But
putting people on teams like men, women, understanding each other. I just think like I just wish it was more. We're just we just all care about each other because it's not about men understanding women, women understanding men. It's more about people understanding other people. You know what I mean? I don't know if that's too naive of me to think about it like that. I mean, we all have unique experiences,
it's well intentioned,
and
but it might,
I don't
yeah.
want to put ourselves in different teams. You know what I mean? We're all on the same side of the same team. We're on the side of the team of making this planet work for everybody. That's the
Yeah,
team that we're on.
so that is very well intentioned, but it might be a little naive considering how what human nature is like. But let's just move on to the
Right, right,
questions.
all right. Okay.
Black Hammer is asking, would you come back to Islam if you see proof in the future? Yes,
Yes,
I would. If there's proof, yeah, of course I would. What
yes.
really made you leave Islam? Lack of proof, lack of evidence.
That's quick.
Simple.
Yeah, same here.
Um,
Okay.
Dylan is saying, I have a print copy of the Skeptics Annotated Bible. How can I get my hands on a Skeptics Annotated Quran?
I
The
want that.
Skeptics,
Okay,
it's not in, I haven't seen it in print, but it
no,
is online.
it
If
is
you Google
online,
Skeptics,
but I want a print version of that.
yeah, it would be amazing.
Yes.
And then so just Google it and you'll find it
I
there.
never thought anybody else is looking for that.
Sohan is suggesting a hashtag. It says, hashtag listen to her, but be agnostic until investigation over, perhaps.
No,
Yeah,
no. Listen, no. There should be hashtag. Take accusations seriously.
that's it.
Yeah.
Take all accusations seriously. Take all of them seriously.
Yes.
And then you can do that. I do still think that there's a difference between the connotation of withholding judgment
Or maybe,
versus.
okay. Here's actually that's too wordy. How about just a simple change? Listen to all accusers. Like believe all women. How about just small change? Listen to all women.
I like the hashtag believe survivors because it's assumed they're
Well, I mean,
survivors.
if they're survivors, then you should.
It doesn't say believe all accusers. It says
believe survivors.
I like that. So anyway,
yeah, but that's a self-fulfilling thing, though. Okay. Go on. Next one.
okay. So more. I'm gonna start getting to some of the commenters who we haven't gotten to yet. Oh, hold on.
I hope we have time to show you your second. Maybe instead of the ukulele lady, we show you the tweet, the other one, the one that you got more shit for.
Yeah, no. We'll do both.
Okay.
We have some time. Okay, hold on. I have to go back up to find my place now. Oh wow, there's a lot of comments here. So yeah.
By the way,
sorry. Okay, I found my place. All right. Blonde and Fennel saying, I think men's behavior is getting better. It's less acceptable for men to be shitheads. They're more likely to be held responsible. I agree.
Okay. But okay, men's behavior has gotten better, but I don't think you guys a lot of people underestimate by how much. It's not just like the 1980s of men behavior compared to now, right? We're talking about look at the progress we have made historically. We used to feed each other humans to lions as a form of entertainment, and everybody used to think that's a-okay. All right, so the progress that we're looking at is way beyond just Make sure, if you're saying this, you're considering how it could be perceived by the other side. These are great progress as well, but these are minor improvements compared to the improvements we have made to civilization. So if you look at it from in a longer perspective. But go on.
Yeah, so Jim is saying, I don't think Ali has read much Republican stuff on social media. Many simply call Ford a liar. They're just worried about false claims no
Yeah,
matter what
that's
a guy
bullshit.
does. Yeah, that's
It's
I read Republican stuff all the time. In fact,
no.
more than half of the stuff I
And
read is
another
Republican
another
because I
pro
find it
yeah.
entertaining. First of all, the other thing is I saw what the Republican Senate did. I saw what the Republican president did. I mean, I've seen all the Republican op-eds. I know exactly what they think. I just think that they're completely wrong on this. I do think that it was politically smart for them to do. Politically, I can't imagine anybody who would. I can't imagine these guys not. I mean, they have a chance to put a an anti-abortion conservative guy on the Supreme Court. First major change
Oh,
that the
I have a
Supreme Court
comment
made.
on this. I have a comment on
Right
this.
now, the thing is, what's going to happen? And I just want to make it clear for everybody: is abortion will be illegal in about a third or almost half of U.S. states, about 20 states, in within 2 years. It's going to be illegal, and of course it would be. I mean, all the stars are aligned right now. First, you had Anthony Kennedy, who was a swing state justice. Swing state. He was a
And let's
swing
not get
justice.
into too much into that.
Yeah,
Just
but do you have this? So this is something that the Republicans have wanted for a long time.
yeah.
So they weren't going to look at the short-term fallout of this. They were going to look at the long-term benefits over the next couple of decades.
So
So
here's the
anyway,
thing: if that's true, do you think that it doesn't make sense how many people that are supposedly caring for women spoke more, came out more in the U.S. came out more against Kavanaugh when he was accused of how many women he's accused of mistreating, abusing?
there were five accusations, but there were like two or three that were actually
Let's
investigated.
say 5, okay? Let's say 10,
Yeah.
okay? So let's say he abused 10 women. That was more of a reason for people to come out and try to get him, speak against him than when he was going to be against women's rights for millions of women. Like he could potentially hurt, destroy the lives of millions of women, but abusing 5 women became more of an issue to women rights activists than the potential cost that this man is going to have to millions of women. Do you see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I think those are. I think both of them were concerns, but they're both in different realms, right? One
Yeah,
was
but one of them is
about.
greater than the other one, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah. It is greater. They're different though because one of them was really about his character. He's like, this is the kind of guy who does this kind of thing.
But this is
Okay.
why the Republicans and the Christians are winning, because they are looking at consequences rather than, like, they're voting for Trump and people that don't seem to even be very Christian or very Republican because they're looking about the long-term consequences, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're looking at the big picture. So yeah, moral character and all that, but if you want to
Yeah,
win this
I think
game,
people think of one thing as a policy issue where, okay, he disagrees on certain issues, and another one as a character issue. So one is more of
but
a,
isn't the policy issue more important? The fact that, because given that, aren't you a consequentialist? Aren't you thinking about, if you want to help women, isn't that a bigger concern? Isn't that going to hurt more
I
women?
I think it's I see what you're saying. I get it. So a lot of this has to do with, like, when you have one leukemia kid and you see their picture, the kid has leukemia. Can you donate? People donate like crazy. But if it's a hospital full of 10,000 kids with leukemia, people won't donate because they can't relate to it. They can't empathize with it as much. But I think that there are two different realms. I think one is, like, Bill Clinton was excellent on policy. Like, there was nothing really wrong with the stuff that he did policy-wise, with a few exceptions,
Yeah,
in my opinion, at least.
there's
But
some.
then when it came to, but he was also most likely, I mean, he was a guy who assaulted a lot of women, and he harassed a lot of women.
Yeah.
And
These.
I think there's a lot of evidence for that. So
Yeah.
I sometimes I think that is the character thing makes a difference.
Yeah, but it
Uh,
shouldn't compared to the policy thing because B
I
just
think both
saying
should. I think
no. I
both
mean,
matter. Yeah,
well, one of them should be more important than the other. B
yeah,
just saying one is emotional, the accusation, the other is rational, the
yeah,
policy aims. Well, yeah, that's why I'm saying reels
yeah.
before
It's like the
feels.
intellectual versus a personal. I think both of them have their own realms.
Well, Well, I mean, if you give more weight to the intellectual one, more people are gonna suffer less.
Hmm.
I mean, isn't that
I,
the whole point of decisions?
well, when you have both, I think if you have one, you would talk about the one. But if you have both, you talk about both. They
I
did talk about his policy. He
Yeah,
had
but
like
not as
3 days of
much. Not
no, no, no.
as
They
much.
did. They did. They had a
No,
whole
come on. We
interrogation
had
room.
the whole fucking nation is like hates him now, where they should have hated him before. Okay, the
Oh
whole
no, but they
like.
didn't because there's a lot of the nation that actually thinks
I
that
mean, they should have hated him more because of this other stuff
no, but
than
they
they
didn't
hated.
look at those things as anti-woman. They saw those things as pro-fetus,
No,
right?
even people that are against, that agree with us that this is against women's rights,
Mhm.
this is bad for women. Emotionally, these five women mattered more than those millions of women.
Oh, I don't know. I'll have to
Again,
think about that.
okay, think about
But Dylan is saying, when are we going to talk about how David Silverman got totally fucked over? Um, I I don't know that much about the David Silverman case. I know that he put up a statement recently. First of all, he's been on the show, and we did have a really good episode with him. So you
it.
should check that out if you know David Silverman. He was a former president of American Atheists that also had to resign because he was investigated for there were numerous accusations of him being inappropriate with women, one of whom I know. Um,
Oh, you do?
Oh no! Sorry, that was Lawrence Krauss. Sorry, damn it. Okay, getting all these like atheist accused people mixed up. But he did put up a statement saying that he had there's stuff that he apologized for where he didn't he wasn't happy with his conduct, but he insists that he never did anything without consent. So
Yeah,
yeah, I
don't know
again
much about them,
don't know, withholding judgment, as Armin says.
but take seriously.
Yeah, take seriously.
Right.
Absolutely. So, all okay. 30% of you're not manned.
But here's a problem that we have though. Like, for people that don't have the information,
Ah, my favorite topic. Anyway, go ahead.
and then some people have the information, and the people that have the information know things that we don't know, and because of the things they know, some accusations might be more like, for them it's obviously that it happened, right? But then it's unfair for them to get angry at people that are not in the position that they are, right? Like, they, even if all the information is out there, they're like, well, all the information is out there, why are you not calling it out? Well, I haven't read it, right? Like, I haven't investigated it. You have, okay? So you are at a more degree of sense. And they're like, no, I know, so you have to believe me. Like, well, you know because you've read it. I don't. Like, you can't expect me to be in the same level of certainty that you are, given the information that I have is much less than the information that you have.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's frustrating, especially if against somebody you care about, but it's an unreasonable expectation to have of people that don't have the information. Anyways, go on.
Yeah. But on the other hand, like if you do want to comment about something, and if you
Yeah,
want to go out there and really
don't comment. Okay, yeah. If you really want to
get all the information,
right? But
yeah.
but it's fair to say, like, hey, I don't know.
Or be open. You can express your opinion, but be open. Say that based on the information I have. I think it'd be really good if people started talking that way.
Yeah,
like based on the information that I know.
Yes.
And correct me if I'm wrong.
It
Something you'll
seems
never hear
like
the
you can
Pope
say,
say.
like, it seems like, I'm willing
Yeah.
to change my opinion given more information. Like, all these words is great, but no, it's not good enough apparently.
So Adam's saying, who would you guys like to see run for president against Trump in 2020? Thoughts on a Warren Booker potential ticket? Armin, you want to take this? Because I definitely will have something to say.
Andrew Yang, because he's the first person that's running for president of the United States that openly came out and said that he wants to protect atheists. I mean, so that's
Oh,
huge
I love
progress.
that.
Yeah,
You
Andrew Yang.
talked to him, didn't you?
Yeah, I recorded him saying that.
Yeah, cool, sweet. So,
Yeah, Andrew
uh,
Yang 2020. He's
yeah, so
he was on Sam Harris's podcast. He's the universal income guy.
yeah, I haven't heard that one, but I'll check it out. For me, it's really weird. Like for a few months, I've been telling. I think that the guy who's going to beat Trump, it can't be a conventional politician
Mm.
because that's Trump's advantage. He's like, oh, these politicians, I'm the outside guy. It has to be some kind of outsider, and it has to be somebody who can throw him zingers at debates.
Mm.
Because that's what people look for. It's a reality show. That's how Trump won. And if he does win again, that's why he's going to win again. So I think that, and it was weird. I was telling Alicia about this for months now that I think Michael Avenatti is the only guy who's got the balls to actually go against him because he's so badass on Twitter, and the way that he, whether you agree with him or not, he really is not. I mean, he goes all out, and it was really funny because I think a couple of weeks ago on the Bill Maher show, I saw Steve Bannon say the same thing. He's telling Bill Maher, he's like, "Oh, Michael Avenatti." So I don't know. I hope he runs. It'll definitely be more entertaining. A Warren Booker potential ticket, yeah, but I think they're going to get.
What about Bloomberg?
Oh yeah, okay. So yeah, the second I actually was going to say this. The second guy, I think Bloomberg is good because first of all, Bloomberg can be the guy who says, "I'm the real billionaire." He can be sort of like, "Oh, this guy's nothing." He's like, "I'm the guy who's I know how to run a fucking business." Like this guy doesn't know how to run anything. Bloomberg is also more, he was mostly a Democrat and then he became a Republican. I agree with him on a lot of things. So, but I do think that he's very, very old, and I don't think that in the kind of climate that there is, I think he has more of a chance than a lot of the others. I still think that Bernie has a really good chance, but I don't think conventional politicians are gonna.
I don't like Bernie. I mean, I like Bernie Sanders personally. He's very nice, but I don't like his policies. Sorry.
Yeah, this is not going to be a policy election. If the Democrats make this about a policy election, they're screwed. This election has to be about.
So emotional
I know it sounds
over
cynical.
real policies. That's fair.
No, yeah, it has. Well, it always is. Elections are always emotional, but it has to be about past versus future. It has to be about sticking to the old school, the way of doing things, and holding on to what we don't want to let go, versus moving in and experimenting with what's coming in the future. That's what it has to be about. It has to be about values versus, no values, even good versus evil. I think it has to. If they frame it that way politically, I think it'll be a much more fruitful election for the Democrats.
Go. Next question.
Brian's saying, to me, Ali Rizvi, I think you need to go back on the Joe Rogan podcast.
Questions. Focus on questions.
Yeah, no, he's saying I think the interview you did was great, but I think it was 2 or 3 years ago? Question mark, which is why I read the question. Thank you, Brian. I'll quickly respond to this. I will. He usually likes people to go to SoCal to be there personally. So next time I go there, I'll definitely hit him up and hopefully get on there. I really enjoyed it last
Mention
time.
the podcast.
Moose. Yeah, of course. At that time, it didn't exist. So
yeah, I know.
So Moose saying secular jihadists. Why do people in the secular community care so much about the labels?
Labels are great. I don't understand why people.
They're fun.
Labels are great because first of all, everything we are saying is a label, isn't it? Like our names are labels. I mean, I don't really understand the problem people have with labels. If we didn't have some of these labels, it would take entire paragraphs to be able to talk about our views to other people.
I had this kind of
Yeah.
I had this conversation there was this thing, I think it was on Twitter today, that we were talking about this, the whole atheist label. And someone was saying, they were quoting Sam Harris, that people don't call themselves non-astrologers or non-alchemists. And
I challenged Sam in Vancouver.
I saw that.
Yeah, you saw. Yeah, on that.
But even he goes on to say that the reason that you need a word like atheist, and I'm paraphrasing, he may not have said it exactly like this, but the reason you need it is, supposing that you had people bombing other countries, executing gays, subjugating women, committing genocide because the moon is in Leo. Supposing that, then you can bet there would be a non-astrologer movement. There would be loads of people coming out saying, no, fuck you, I am not an astrologer. I don't believe in all this censorship and war that's happening because of astrologers. So, yeah, that's the kind of position we're in. So I think the labels are important. On the other hand, secular jihadist, atheist Muslim, these are fun things. I think they poke fun at how vacuous some of these terms are sometimes as
So we
well.
got a super chat of $4.99 by Nader. Do you want to read that one?
Oh, yeah. Hold on. Let me see if I can get to it. Can you read it, Armin? Because I can't. It's
Okay,
off my screen.
Nader Alkam is saying. By the way, thank you so much for the super chat. That's very generous. He's saying, "I love you guys. The left wing is waging a war on men." So how would you respond to that?
Thank you for the contribution, and I love you too, but I don't think there's a war on men.
But I was okay. I don't. I think maybe okay. So what happens is that basically it's like overcorrection. Okay, so you have you have anti minority, for example, racism, right? So you have overcorrection of hating white people, right, and racism against white people, right? You and the overcorrection doesn't help solve the original problem, right? You have anti-woman discrimination, a lot of anti-woman discrimination and oppression globally, and still in the West. And a lot of women try to say like, oh, there is no anti-woman discrimination anymore in the West. No, there's still also still in the West as well. But you have overcorrection to that, and the overcorrection to that is
Misandry.
hmm?
Is it misandry or misandry? I don't know how you pronounce it. The
I don't
hatred
know,
of men.
but yeah, hatred of men, hatred of anything masculine, um, toxic masculinity, all that stuff. All trying to eliminate completely gender roles, even though the ones that are biologic and you can't really get rid of. You get a lot of overcorrection. But I think it's an overgeneralization to say the left wing is waging a war on men, because there are a lot of people on the left that are great, that are sane, that are great thinkers, just like there's a lot of great thinkers on the right. Not all people on the left are social justice warriors, far leftists, right? And not all people on the right are xenophobic, racist, far right, alt right, whatever. And also I think it's an exaggeration to call it a war on men, right? I just think it's better to refer to it as an overcorrection that needs to be adjusted. But
Yeah,
go.
I think that that's very well put. I'm a man. I think that most men are doing pretty well right now.
Yeah.
I'm pretty happy. I'm where I am. So.
No, but that doesn't mean that there's no that the
Of course,
overcorrection isn't
no,
against
there is,
yeah.
And there are. So I'll tell you what. Like, let's just talk about this. Like the MRA movement, the men's rights activists. The thing is, there's a couple of points that they have that I agree with. Like, when it comes to military services. I mean, I have friends who've been burned in divorce settlements and child custody settlements, and I've seen them crumble down and just cry because they didn't get custody of their kids, and I know how much they love and care for their kids. And so there's like those things are serious issues, but the majority of this, I don't know, I'm just not a big fan of the victimhood peddling all the time. I think things should be kept in perspective. It's like what we talked about, the whole climate change thing. When you raise a panic about it and you politicize it, then it just harms the whole cause in itself.
I mean, it's okay to claim victimhood when you're the victim. But I mean,
Yeah,
I think
but as a movement, I don't think overall as there are
there are
individuals,
a lot of
certain
feminists
issues.
that see eye to eye with them. I mean, okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I mean,
Actually, a lot of feminists actually think that those divorce settlements and the child custody settlements are incredibly unfair.
I don't
Right?
mind having an entire group focusing on certain issues, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, suicide rates, like, if you think women have unique issues that you need to have women rights advocates and feminists focusing on it, men also have unique issues. Like suicide rates for some fucking reason is much higher in men, right? So that's unique to men. It's fine to have specific groups focusing on that.
Yeah, that's I completely, and it's like the same thing with the custody battles. If there was a group of men who was saying, that this is like we're a lobby that we're going to fight for more just laws when it comes to custody battles for children after divorce for men.
Right.
And if that was an issue, I would totally support that. I think that's an issue.
All right, let's go.
Okay, so Blonde Infidels is suggesting that we get Mimsy, Vid's Vidu's wife. Yeah, I totally think that we should. I've heard a lot about her. I haven't
Yes.
seen her stuff yet, but it's
No, I've
totally on
seen
my
some of her
list.
stuff. She's great. She's
Yeah,
fantastic.
I,
Yeah.
I do want to get
We
her for
should.
sure.
Yeah.
Um, and then uh,
Give us more
Yasmina,
recommendations. By the
Jim.
way, give more recommendations like this to Ali because Ali is in charge of bringing
Yeah, I
on
do
the
that.
guests. Yeah. So.
Jim said that you're going to have Yasmina Ali on the podcast. Yes, we're scheduling it. So, yeah, she is coming on the podcast, and we will have her on soon. Cuntspell. Do you think Aziz Ansari's
Oh, and
minority
also
status?
we need more patrons on this show. Like sometimes we have some shows that it's just some of our patrons on the show. So more reach out to us on Patreon if you're one of our patrons that you want to be on the show, so we can schedule that. But yeah,
Yeah.
go on. Yeah.
Cuntspell is saying, do you think Aziz Ansari's minority status society, maybe cost society, would be more skeptical towards his accusations? That's a really good question. I don't know if it did for others, but I don't think so. I think the Aziz Ansari, we had a guy here in Canada called Gian Gamishi, who was he's also a brown guy from an Iranian background, and he was completely killed on this. I mean, even though he was found, he was acquitted by the courts. Um, he was there was no, I mean, nobody had any doubt about what he did. He was treated just like anybody else who would have committed those crimes. So, and Aziz Ansari, I think the reason that the thing that was written about him was anonymous. It was more creepy, more like a bad date thing than it was an assault. It wasn't an assault or even harassment by any measure, really. So, and we had Alishba talk to us on an episode that we had with Alishba earlier this year. We talked about that in a lot of detail, the Aziz Ansari thing. So, no, I don't think it was racial. Moose is saying, I think Kamel Nanjiani from Silicon Valley is an ex-Muslim. Do you know for sure? I'm not going to say. Sohan saying, did you discuss Islamic figures who got singed by Metoo, e.g. Tariq Ramadan, Numan Ansari? No, we didn't discuss them specifically, but yeah, I think they should be treated just like anybody else who got slammed by Metoo. I do see a lot of the Muslim reformers, especially some of the more right-leaning ones, who tend to be very sympathetic towards, like, they think Me Too's gone too far. But when it comes to Tariq Ramadan, they believed it right in the beginning, like immediately, like, it was because of a Muslim guy. I think that's a little insane too.
Yeah. Also,
But yeah,
whenever you hear a priest molested a child, that I think that's the weakness of us atheists, because we always assume, oh, of course it's a priest, so he must have done it, right? Like, no, let's not let's not just only be skeptical from people on our side, right? Let's keep the same level of skepticism and demand for evidence on people from other sides.
and the flip side too, we take when kids when there are people who talk about priests and they say that I was abused by a priest, people don't have trouble believing that or taking that accusation seriously. There's no reason we shouldn't treat other people, women, that way as well.
By the way,
Super chat.
super
Can
chat,
you read it out?
$10 super chat. That's very generous from not Neil Tyson. From not Neil Tyson. The super chat says, "Love you guys. Please keep making content." Aw, that's very sweet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kate saying, Armin, I just finished the Atheist Muslim. Thank you. Beautiful way to express your way of seeing life after death. Letter to the end. Is that letter published online somewhere? So this is the one you were saying that was my book.
Yes.
Yeah, Kate. Sorry. Yeah, that was actually thank you.
I'm happy to take credit for that book. You could take
Please
credit.
go ahead.
From
Yeah, it's fine.
wrote
What
the
matters
Atheist
is the
Muslim.
ideas.
And you wrote Why There's No God.
Yeah, Kate, if you go online, I wrote about it in HuffPost. The article is called Grief Without Belief, How Atheists Deal with Death. So
You didn't
if
link
you
to it in
just
your
go to that,
book?
you can find out. No, it's the whole letter is in my book. I actually
Okay.
included it in my book.
Okay, yeah.
So
I read your book, but that was a while ago. All right, go.
okay. Adam saying, any thoughts on Ayan's recent drift rightward? Other secularists and atheists drifting more towards the right.
Well, Ayan was
Does this
always
concern?
right. Wasn't
She's always been right wing. She's always been conservative. She really supported the whole Kavanaugh thing even after that hearing, which I know. Well,
What was her
Sam
reasoning?
Harris talked. Huh?
What was Ayan's reasoning for being for Kavanaugh?
I don't know. she just posted all these articles talking about how she wants him confirmed, which is I disagree with that completely. I think it's really
Yeah, I
strange
disagree with her.
because Brett Kavanaugh is number one. He thinks that the wall between church and state is an illusion. He thinks
Yeah.
it's he has called it a bad
I mean,
metaphor.
I haven't read it, but she linked to an article when she posted her support for him.
Yeah, and she said confirmed. And she's done 2 or 3 tweets about confirming
No, but what did the
Kavanaugh.
article? Did you read the article?
It was a Wall Street Journal article that was basically saying that Kavanaugh, we need him on the Supreme Court, and it was just standard stuff. But the reason that I found it surprising in the case of Ayan is because Kavanaugh, not only is he does he think that the wall between church and state is a bad metaphor, but he's also against most of the things that Ayan claims to be against. I mean, it's a very strange thing.
Against most of the things Ayan claims to be for.
Yeah. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
So I just found that really strange. But Ayan has said other things that she said a long time ago that she thinks Bibi Netanyahu should win the Nobel Peace Prize, which I thought was kind of insane. Yeah. But I've met her personally. I like her a lot. I disagree with her on many things. I agree with her on many things, and I really want to try to get her on the podcast. It hasn't happened yet, but I'm still trying.
I
other secularists and atheists.
I disagree with her on the reform thing as well. Her book. Yeah. Okay. Go on.
Yeah, other secularists and atheists are different more towards the right. I actually haven't found that. So I think that there's Twitter has this thing where people.
What's the question? Can you read the full question?
It's a continuation on Ayan's drift rightward. Then he's also saying other secularists and atheists are drifting more towards the right. So I've seen this that there are certain corners of Twitter where this is true, and people tend to follow who they like. I tend to follow a lot of people I don't necessarily always agree with, and then when I follow them, eventually sometimes I see things that I agree with them on. The majority of secularists and atheists I know are just not drifting towards the right. They're actually quite disgusted by what's happening with the right now.
I think what's happening is either more atheists that used to be a little bit more right wing are because they used to not speak out because they perceived that atheist community to be so left leaning that they would get kicked out if they did speak out. So now that they're noticing there's a lot of them out there, they might be just more outspoken than before. Or maybe we're just convincing so many more people to be openly atheists or openly atheists that it's also covering the right. So that might not be a bad thing. Maybe it's not that atheists are becoming right wing. It's the case that more people are just becoming atheist.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So I want to kind of close this down because I have to leave in like 8 minutes.
Okay. See,
but,
I knew we're
Alex
not going to get
asking,
to the tweet. You said we have so much time. All right,
we'll talk about it later.
Okay.
But these questions are really good.
Yeah,
Alex is saying, since you can't consent while drunk, can two intoxicated people rape each other? Yeah, this is a very common question. I know Dawkins got in trouble many years ago for talking about, who raped who.
So, for example, if I see a girl and that I want to have sex with, and she's drunk, and I'm like, I can't have sex with her. I have to wait until she's sober. Wouldn't the solution to just be for me to also get pissed drunk, and then nobody can, isn't that like a loophole in the system? How does that work?
So this is something that I brought together in opposition, feminists as well as the sort of men's rights people. When I said this is that I think this, that there's guys, like adult guys, who say that they got raped by women, and they say that that's the same thing. They're like, well, men also get raped by women.
Wait, how's that related to this?
I'll tell you in a bit.
Okay.
I don't think that it's the same thing. I don't think that an adult man who gets raped by a woman is the same thing as an adult woman who gets raped by a man. I think that a woman who gets raped by a man is more analogous to a man being raped by a man. Or like Armin, when you talked about that cab driver who assaulted you, that's why I asked you if it was a woman, would it be different? Most men would say yes, it would be different. And the reason for that is there's a power differential. I think it's really clear. I don't think
honestly, I don't know if this is insensitive of me to say, but as a teenage boy, I might have actually liked it.
Yeah. So no, that's not insensitive. That's actually very honest.
Right.
So you're and the
If
other
it
thing
was
is,
a woman.
I was actually going to discount this, but there's a lot of I've been hearing a lot in response to the same tweet that I put up that we've been talking about. I saw a lot of guys saying, "Hey, men also get raped by women." Sure, I'm sure that there's a lot of put it this way: if there's a woman, supposing there's a woman, a friend of mine, who has just been raped, and if I had been through something like that with a woman, and I sat there and I held her hand, and I am an adult man, and I say, I know exactly how you feel because a woman just raped me last week too. I went through exactly what you went through last week because my girlfriend did this to me and we broke up
Well, I
or
mean,
whatever. She would. How do you think she'd feel? I think she would just never want to talk to me again, and she would be justified because it's not the same thing. Now, if I told her that yes, the
well, I
same thing
mean,
happened to me,
depends on
that
your experience. How did she rape you? Maybe she like, she,
I- we're, ta- we're talking about. I mean, okay, exceptions. We got to
okay,
get to the
on
devil's.
average, you're right. On average, you're right.
Yeah. So if she did it at gunpoint, if she had weapons, if she had me tied down, if I
By
was
the way, I didn't know
disabled,
if it's even possible until I read reports. I didn't know how is it possible for somebody to,
yeah. So yeah.
yeah.
So this is why I
But it
think that when
happens apparently, yeah.
the idea that can you consent while you're drunk if both of them are intoxicated, I still think that there is a power differential. Rape is not just about sex. People say it's not about sex at all. No, it is about sex, but it is also about power. A lot of it is about power, and the power differential has to be there. And I think that that's clearly
Yeah,
up
but
there.
okay,
But I do think.
let me tell you this. I don't know
But
what.
let me say one last thing. I don't think that the guy, if two intoxicated people do it, and the guy says, "I thought it was consensual," unless it's very clear that it wasn't, I think that we can give the guy the benefit of the doubt where he wasn't able to read the signs. I
What if
think
he planned to
we should
be
be lenient.
intoxicated after she was intoxicated? I think that's
Well,
planning
that's a whole
before.
different.
But by the way,
Yeah.
Nader give us another super chat. Thank you so much, Nader. It's very generous of you. Even after we disagreed with you, you still gave us another super chat. That's very sweet. 110.99, and he's saying, do you guys have a podcast on Apple? Yes, on Apple, iTunes, and everywhere else that you could get podcasts, we're available. So, thank you so much, Nader. By the way, I do want to say I agree with you on that. I do think that obviously being raped by a man is on average, is way worse than being raped by a woman, and I don't understand why you got so much shit for that. I think a lot of people think that when you saying something is worse than something else, you're endorsing. Like if I say cancer is worse than AIDS, that's kind of like endorsement of AIDS. Like it means I'm pro AIDS for some reason. No, cancer is worse than AIDS. That doesn't mean that AIDS is good in any way. Like I don't understand.
If a woman forced me to have sex with her, and I'm an adult, we're not talking about me being underage or anything, and I'm an adult, and she forced me to have sex with her. It wasn't a gunpoint. It wasn't a me being disabled. I wasn't drugged or anything. It was just normal. I didn't want to, and she made me do it. I would be annoyed. I would be like, what the fuck? I might feel a little embarrassed. But honestly, within a couple of weeks, and this is just me, I know it's different for different people, different men. It would be an annoyance. It wouldn't be something that would be traumatic for me.
I can't think of scenarios that would be traumatic, but I'm not gonna go there.
Yeah.
But let's go finish the questions.
Jimmy is saying, Jimmy McClimate, do you either of you have any spiritual practice, meditation, etc.? For me, honestly, it's music. I like music. I like to me just stuff. I know that a lot of people meditate, but for me, when I spend time with my daughter, I mean that is it feels spiritual to me. When I go outside star watching. My wife likes to photograph outside, and we like doing that. It's all of that to me is, I think it's all the time. There's always something weirdly transcendent or whatever going on. Music, wine, kids.
What was the question?
Do you meditate? Spiritual practice? Anything?
I meditated for a while. Then I quit. Now with Sam Harris's new app coming on Android, I'm going to give it another shot.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, more questions about the Ion thing. There was, guys. I'm really sorry. We're just gonna do one more question.
There are some really good questions. You need to get to all of them. Okay, no more questions. Yeah.
I can't. I got a minute. I'll just have to go home.
Okay, okay.
So, Armin, okay, so let's do. Can we do two more questions, Armin? You choose the questions.
Okay, Muscal is saying, Armin, if you don't like Sanders' policies, are you a Republican? Well, technically can't be a Republican because I'm a Canadian. But even if I was an American, I would not be a Republican. No. So no. I mean, just because I'm against one side doesn't mean I'm for the other.
Hmm.
Do you think Canadians? B just saying, do you think Canadians know more about Americans' politics than our own? Um, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that a lot of them do. Norm Macdonald actually put this best. He said that he was on the Jon Stewart show, and he's like, "Well, I'm Canadian, so with the Americans, like, you vote for the wrong guy, and he's gonna bomb a country, and if you vote for the right guy, he won't bomb him. But if you're Canadian, you vote for the wrong guy, he's gonna build a bridge, and the other guy is gonna say, oh, I don't really care too much for the bridge." And
This
that really is those are consequences. So
okay.
if you vote, my brother votes conservative
Okay,
here.
okay.
He,
Let's go
he
to the
said,
next question. This is why
yeah,
we do. This is why we didn't get to answer all the questions because you take too long to answer each
that's
question.
what we're doing. That's what the whole show's about. It's about answering questions.
Mars is saying the antics of regressive lefts keep coming to the extent there's what to the extent there's doubt there will be a blue wave in November to at least balance out the red. May we have your opinion on what will occur? Do you? I think okay. Do you agree with that? That there's going to be a blue wave in November that will balance out
I think the Democrats are going to win the House, and I think the Republicans are
the
going to keep the
antics?
Senate. They may even gain a seat in the Senate. Um, so yeah, I don't think it's going to be a massive blue wave the way it should have
Oh,
been,
I read
and
that
a
wrong.
lot of that is because of the Democrats' incompetence.
So I read that wrong. The antiques of the regressive left keep coming to the extent there's doubt there will be a blue wave in November. Okay, okay, okay. So they're
Mm.
basically saying this: the regressive left is self-destructing itself. That he has doubt that there's going to be a blue wave. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, if
I don't think it'll be as big as it should be.
yeah, I mean, and that's the left's fault if it happens. I mean, if you lose to Trump again, that's because you guys suck so much that you managed to lose to somebody so shitty.
Okay.
Yeah,
I got to respond to one thing, and
right.
I know Armin, you're going to hate me for this. Jim is saying more likely that Roe v. Wade won't be overturned, and the court will uphold cases. Here's the thing: right now there are five anti-abortion justices on the Supreme Court. There's four who are not. That hasn't been the case for a very very long time. Okay. Now what's going to happen is since the Republicans know that they have a majority of pro-life candidates, of course one of the states is going with the intention of taking it to the Supreme Court. They're going to outlaw abortion. When they outlaw abortion, that case is going to go up to the Supreme Court as they intended. And the only way that the Supreme Court can decide it is by either upholding Roe v. Wade or by repealing it or by overturning it. So since you have
Okay.
five justices, they're most likely going to overturn it. That is what I
Oh my
think.
god.
Jeffrey Toobin has said this. I completely agree with him. I think within 2 years, abortion is going to be illegal in about 20 American states. Let's see.
You were right. I am hating you for taking time to say that. But
Don't say you're hating. Just withhold judgment.
okay. Kate is saying, Ali Armin, very sorry I got your names completely mixed up. Thanks for the answer, Ali. Um,
It's because we look alike.
Ladybug. I'll have a look at Grief Without Belief and will share with friends. And then Kate
Thank
said,
you.
Armin, Pink Flower. These symbols work very well because it got my attention to read them.
Armin is so easy to please.
Yeah, they're
Just a
pretty.
pink
Uh,
flower.
I just got your book on my Kindle. Oh, that's nice. And will I ask my and I will I think it means and I will ask my library to get the paperback. Thank you both for your work and courage. Oh, thank you, Kate. That's very sweet. Okay, so Brian is saying Ali's goal for 2019 is to go on Rogan's podcast for a second time.
Yeah,
Armin's
I will try my best. For those who didn't see the first one, go check out. Just Google Joe Rogan Ali Rizvi. You can see the episode. It was a lot of fun. I really had a
Actually, I
time.
think okay. Make the goal make the goal be to have Joe Rogan on the podcast. That would be even bigger. Amazing. So for
Yeah.
2020,
Okay.
Armin goal for 2019 is to get 1 million more followers for Atheist Republic. Oh,
Easy.
Okay, we'll try. But yeah, that was good. Oh, then one more comment. Don't forget about the ukulele girl next time. See, Mike wanted us to do the ukulele girl because you took too long in our
It's gonna
question.
be. We're gonna put it in the description. You'll see it.
No, but I wanted to criticize it. Now, no, don't put it in the description because now people are just gonna see one
We'll
side of the
pick up on
argument.
it in the next AMA. We'll start with that on the next AMA.
Okay,
It's
okay.
not like we have limited number of
But that,
AMA.
but no, because the theme of this Q&A was like the Me Too stuff. But if you put it in the next
We'll
Q&A,
put a link to it in the description. I promise. I'm making a note of it right
no,
now.
but I'm saying that you're not gonna hear my criticism of it. That was the entire point of that.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Mars is saying that would be awesome. Joe Rogan would be interesting to talk to, especially because of the depth of his conversations. Armin, you should go on Joe Rogan's show. Thank you, Mars. I've seen it. I want to. I think Ali would do a better job on that show. I've seen it. I want to hear your comments. Yeah, I did. Yeah, it's Ali's fault that we don't have time. Okay, so
It's past midnight
you
here,
know what?
guys. I'm in Toronto.
I might do an either Atheist Republic review of it or a Penguin Philosophy. Maybe a Penguin Philosophy review of that video. But then Ali is not going to be here to tell me what
I
I'm
won't get to
wrong.
argue against
Yeah,
it.
you won't
Yeah.
be there to argue. Maybe I'll have you as a
Maybe
guest.
that's why you want to do it on your own.
Yeah, I want. No, okay. Oh, one more comment. Muscal saying, Armin and Ali, I'll make requests to see if I can get your books at my library. They are more likely to fulfill my request because I'm on on staff there. Oh, thank you. Most appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right.
There's one actually really good question that was about what is from Adam. What is your view on assisted suicide, euthanasia, mercy killing in a legal way in terms of dying with
I'm
dignity?
for it because my mom died from cancer and it was such a fucking horrible experience, and I think she would have if she had the option of going on living in a much more peaceful and much less painful way, she would have taken it for sure. And I wish she had that option. I mean, we're in Canada, but that whole now we have that option now. But I think it came too late. And the way my mom died was, a very not very bad experience. I wish we had that option. I wish everybody had that option.
Yeah, well, in Canada we do now. So
we do now,
Canada,
but we didn't have it when
we
she
didn't
died.
have it then.
Yeah.
And in Canada, assisted suicide and dying with dignity is a big thing. I think it's extremely important. When I was 13 years old in ninth grade, one of the first research reports I ever did in school was on euthanasia. So, yeah, I completely support it. I think it's very important.
My mom used to cry and say, "What did I do to deserve this?" Like she was in so much pain. As such a. I mean, for somebody that was so kind to so many people, that it was not the right way to go. It was not the best. It was not a good way to end such a good life. Anyways.
Yeah, I'm really sorry about that.
No, that's fine. Anyways, sorry for bumming you all out. Okay, bye guys. Thank you guys, everybody in the
All
live
right,
chat.
guys. Thank you.
Adam, Matt, Moose, Mars, Brian, Bye, Conspel, Mike. Love you all.
And yes, the Sam Harris
Alex,
episode will be out in a few days.
Kate, Adam, I think, has a Jim. Everybody,
Mars.
Nader, and who else is? Let me read the other one. Not Neil Tyson. You guys are awesome. Thank you, and bye, guys. Stop streaming.